Hey there, tonight we're exploring the magnetic pull of Attila the Hun's leadership. Not the brute force conqueror you're used to, but a leader whose charisma united tribes under a banner of fierce loyalty. If these stories help you unwind, I'd love a quick like or subscribe, but only if they're genuinely working for you. I'm curious where in the world you're listening from, so drop your location and local time in the comments. It's amazing seeing our little community span the globe through these historical tales. Now settle in, maybe turn on some white noise or grab your favorite blanket, and let's drift into tonight's story together. In the grand chaos that was 5th century Europe, where allegiances were as stable as a house of cards in a windstorm, and everyone seemed to have a sword in one hand and a treaty in the other, a boy named Attila was born into the world of the Huns. Now, when you think of Attila, you might picture a fierce warrior, but let's rewind a bit to his early days, where the future scourge of God was just a kid with a knack for geopolitics and a taste for strategic marriages. Attila was born around AD 406, give or take a year, because let's face it, record-keeping back then was about as precise as a game of medieval telephone. He was part of the Hunnic royal family, which, by the way, was less about wearing crowns and more about wearing down opponents. His early life was steeped in the complex, often downright bizarre political landscape of Europe, where the Romans, Goths, and a veritable who's who of tribes were all jockeying for the biggest slice of the pie. Now, the Huns weren't exactly rolling in luxury. They were nomadic warriors, raised in the saddle with a deep tan from the stepson and an impressive ability to eat, sleep, and probably even daydream on horseback. Attila's upbringing was a crash course in survival, diplomacy, and the fine art of intimidation. His family was adept at playing the long game, forming alliances and breaking them just as quickly when it suited their needs. It was like an ancient version of speed dating, but with more axes and fewer awkward silences. Let's talk about one of the secret weapons in the Hunnic arsenal, strategic marriages. Attila's family understood that a good marriage could be as powerful as 1,000 warriors. They married into other tribes, creating a web of alliances that would make any contemporary political strategist proud. These unions were less about romance and more about securing loyalty, land, and occasionally a little peace and quiet from potential enemies. The political landscape of Europe at the time could make even the savviest politician break into a cold sweat. The Western Roman Empire was on the decline, teetering on the brink of collapse like an overripe fruit, while the Eastern Roman Empire was doing its best to keep the barbarians at bay. Meanwhile, the Goths, Vandals, and Franks were all trying to carve out their own empires. It was a veritable Game of Thrones, minus the dragons, and with more actual backstabbing. Attila's rise was fueled by these chaotic times. The Huns were seen as both a threat and an opportunity. Some tribes viewed them as the ultimate nightmare, while others saw them as potential allies against a common enemy. Either way, Attila and his kin were in the perfect position to exploit the chaos for their own gain. Culturally, the Huns were a pragmatic bunch. They weren't big on writing things down. That was for those bookish Romans. Instead, they relied on oral tradition and a healthy dose of intimidation. Economically, they thrived on raiding and the occasional extortion deal, which, let's be honest, was just an ancient form of taxation. They were masters at demanding tribute from the Romans, who often paid up just to keep the Huns from knocking on their door unexpectedly with a battering ram. As Attila grew, he learned from his uncle Viewer, who was then the king of the Huns. Viewer had a reputation for being both a shrewd leader and a bit of a wild card, which is a polite way of saying he was as unpredictable as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. Under Viewer's tutelage, Attila honed his skills in diplomacy, warfare, and the fine art of making his enemies sweat just by walking into a room. Historians often paint Attila as a barbaric invader, but let's not forget that he was also a diplomat when it suited him. He could negotiate with the best of them, often holding court with Roman ambassadors and sending them home relieved to still have their heads attached. But make no mistake, his charisma was backed by the ever-present threat of Hunnic retribution, which was a potent negotiating tool. So, there you have it. Attila the Hun, shaped by a world in turmoil, raised in a culture that valued strength, cunning, and the occasional well-placed marriage. His early years set the stage for a legendary career that would make him the bane of Europe and the subject of countless tales, some true, many embellished, and all part of the mosaic that is history. As we delve deeper into Attila's life in the following parts, we'll see how this scourge of God didn't just ride into legend on horseback. He galloped in with a strategic mind and a knack for making the most of a chaotic world. Attila, the master of chaos, was just getting started. With a strategic brain sharper than a Hunnic arrow, he orchestrated conquests that would leave Europe shaking in its sandals. But let's not paint him as some mindless marauder with a penchant for pillaging. Attila was as much a tactician as a warrior, and his campaigns were as calculated as they were fearsome. First, let's talk about the logistics of moving an army across the vast European landscape. Imagine trying to coordinate tens of thousands of warriors, each with their trusty steed, across terrain that was more rugged than a teenager's first shaving attempt. Modern armies have GPS, supply chains, and online maps. Attila had the stars, well-fed horses, and an uncanny ability to motivate his troops with promises of loot and glory. His forces were like a well-oiled machine, if that machine was fueled by the thrill of conquest and the occasional threat of disciplinary action. Attila's military genius lay in his ability to adapt and innovate. He wasn't just throwing hordes of warriors at a problem and hoping for the best. No, he was the chess master of the battlefield, always thinking several moves ahead. His infamous feigned retreats were nothing short of works of art. They'd charge into battle, then seemingly retreat in disarray, luring their enemies into a false sense of victory. Just as the opponents thought they had the upper hand, the Huns would regroup and pounce with the ferocity of a cat on a laser dart. It was psychological warfare at its finest, and it worked like a charm. But why did Attila march his armies to the ends of the earth, or at least to the limits of the Roman Empire? Well, the short answer is economics. War might be hell, but it's also big business. The Roman Empire, both Western and Eastern, was a treasure trove just waiting to be tapped. The Huns weren't interested in mere survival. They wanted prosperity. And what better way to achieve that than by demanding tribute from the world's superpower? Rome, with its gold, silver, and silk, was the ancient equivalent of a billionaire's wallet, and Attila was more than happy to collect. Speaking of Rome, let's not forget that Attila's dealings with them were as varied as a menu at a buffet. While he was terrorizing their borders, he was also negotiating treaties and exchanging gifts. He even sent a delegation to Constantinople, which was presumably a diplomatic way of saying, "Nice empire you've got there. Shame if something happened to it." The Romans, in turn, paid the Huns to keep the peace. It was protection money on a grand scale, a practice that would make any mob boss proud. Now, if you think moving an army across Europe was a logistical nightmare, imagine feeding it. The Huns were a nomadic people, which meant their supply chain was as mobile as their warriors. They relied heavily on their horses, not just for transportation, but also as a source of food. Yes, in a pinch, a Hunnic warrior might have to dine on his trusty steed. It's a bit like eating your emergency rations, if your emergency rations had 4 legs and a mane. But let's not get too sentimental. Survival was the name of the game, and Attila played it like a pro. And let's not overlook the technological edge the Huns had with their composite bows. These weren't your average sticks and string affairs. They were high-tech for their time, capable of shooting arrows with deadly accuracy over long distances. If modern armies have drones, the Huns had these bows. They were the snipers of the ancient world, stealthy, lethal, and feared by anyone foolish enough to stand in their path. Now, as impressive as Attila's military prowess was, let's not romanticize it too much. The Huns were a brutal force, and their conquests came at a horrific human cost. The tales of devastation they left in their wake are enough to make a horror director blush. Cities were sacked, populations displaced, and entire regions left in ruins. The reality of war is grim, and Attila's campaigns were a testament to that. Yet the allure of his legend lies in this duality, the brilliant strategist and the ruthless conqueror. Let's also talk about the myth of Attila as the unbridled savage, rampaging through Europe like a medieval rock star on tour. While there's a grain of truth to the stories of his ferocity, they often overshadow his cunning diplomacy and strategic acumen. The Romans, for instance, were equally capable of brutality, but their victories were dressed up in the toga of civilization. Attila, on the other hand, didn't have the luxury of good PR. He was the outsider, the barbarian at the gates, and history has a way of amplifying the terror of the unknown. In navigating these vast territories, Attila was also up against nature itself. The European landscape offered challenges aplenty, from dense forests to winding rivers. To a man who grew up in the endless steppes, these were mere inconveniences. The Huns moved with the seasons, adapting to the land and using it to their advantage. They were like a force of nature, as inevitable as the tides and twice as relentless. So there you have it, Attila the Hun, a man who turned chaos into opportunity, leveraging military genius and economic savvy to become the scourge of Europe. His story is one of contrasts, the barbarian and the diplomat, the plunderer and the tactician. As we delve further into his life, we'll see how he continued to shape the course of history, leaving an indelible mark on a world that was never quite the same after he galloped through it. Stay tuned for more tales of intrigue, power, and the occasional well-aimed arrow, as Attila continued to gallop through history, leaving a trail of both awe and terror. His diplomatic dealings with the Roman Empire were as intricate as one of those Byzantine mosaics, full of hidden patterns and surprising twists. Now, let's debunk the myth that Attila was just a blunt instrument of destruction. Sure, he could swing a sword with the best of them, but when it came to diplomacy, he wielded his words like a finely honed blade. First off, let's talk about the famous meeting between Attila and Pope Leo I. Picture this. It's A.D. 452, and Attila's been busy sacking cities like it's his day job. He's poised to march on Rome itself, the crown jewel of the Western Empire. Enter Pope Leo I, the man with the courage, or the divine inspiration, to stand between Attila and the eternal city. The popular story goes that Leo, with nothing but his papal authority and a glint of holy resolve, convinced Attila to pack up his tents and head home. It's a tale that would make any Hollywood screenwriter salivate. But hold your horses, literally. The historical reality is a bit murkier. For one, primary sources like the Prosper of Aquitaine's Chronicle suggest that other factors might have been at play. Attila's army was reportedly weakened by famine and disease, not to mention overextended from previous campaigns. The Huns were as susceptible to bad logistics as any other army, and a strategic withdrawal may have been the smart move. Leo's intervention was probably less of a miraculous save, and more of a convenient excuse for Attila to do what he needed to do anyway. And let's not ignore the possibility of some hefty Roman incentives. It's rumored that Emperor Valentinian Roman III might have sweetened the deal with a little tribute, something along the lines of golden parachute payments, if you will. Attila wasn't opposed to making a profitable retreat if it meant adding a few more shiny coins to his collection. After all, diplomacy often involves a bit of negotiation over who gets the bigger slice of the pie. Speaking of pies, let's dive into the economic aspects of Attila's dealings with Rome. The Huns had a knack for squeezing gold out of the Romans like juice from a lemon. In a treaty from 443, for example, the Eastern Roman Empire agreed to pay a staggering 100 pounds of gold annually to keep the peace. That's over 950 kilograms of gold, folks, a sum that could make even Medes do a double take. This wasn't just protection money, it was a calculated business strategy. Attila knew that maintaining the threat of violence was often more lucrative than actual violence itself. Why burn down the bakery when you can charge the baker rent? In fact, Attila's demands were so audacious that they make the average tax collector look like a charity worker. He could negotiate like a pro, and his terms were often non-negotiable. The Romans found themselves stuck between a rock and a hard place: pay the Huns or face their wrath. It was a classic case of your money or your life, with the Romans frequently opting for the former. And let's not forget the propaganda machine. While the Romans were busy portraying Attila as the ultimate barbarian, he was playing the public relations game in his own way. By presenting himself as a legitimate political force rather than just a marauder, Attila managed to position the Huns as a power to be reckoned with, even respected. Sure, his public image was more ruthless warlord than lovable rogue, but in a world where might often equated to right, it was a savvy move. In the grand chess game of diplomacy, Attila was a master tactician. He played the Romans against each other, exploiting the divisions between the Eastern and Western empires. By keeping both sides guessing, he ensured that the Huns remained a constant and unpredictable force. The Romans might have been the supposed masters of statecraft, but underestimating Attila was a mistake they couldn't afford to make. As for the myth of the untamed barbarian, it's worth remembering that Rome's own emperors were no strangers to ruthlessness. The difference was largely in the packaging. While Roman victories were celebrated in grand arches and elaborate frescoes, Attila's triumphs were etched in the fear he inspired. History often amplifies the terror of the outsider, but beneath the veneer of savagery, Attila was every bit the strategist and statesman. So, as we peel back the layers of Attila's diplomatic dealings, we're left with a picture of a leader who understood the art of negotiation as well as he did the art of war. He was a man who could flip the script, turning potential defeats into victories and enemies into reluctant allies. It's a testament to his complex legacy that centuries later, we're still trying to unravel the truth from the legend. In the next chapter of Attila's story, we'll delve deeper into his relationships with the various tribes and kingdoms of Europe, exploring how he used diplomacy to consolidate power and influence. Stay tuned as we continue to separate fact from fiction in the saga of one of history's most enigmatic figures. As we dive into the next chapter of Attila's tumultuous saga, let's take a moment to appreciate the irony of his situation. Attila, the mighty scourge of God, who had once made emperors quiver in their sandals, was now grappling with the very chaos he had so expertly exploited. Picture a master juggler suddenly finding himself in the middle of a hurricane. His empire was beginning to spin out of control, and even his legendary charisma couldn't keep all the balls in the air. The internal pressures were mounting. Attila's empire, which had expanded faster than a celebrity's social media following, was starting to show cracks. Managing a vast and diverse dominion of nomadic tribes, each with its own ambitions and grievances, was like herding cats, if those cats were armed with swords and had a penchant for betrayal. The Hunnic state was a patchwork quilt of alliances, and it didn't take much for the seams to start unraveling. One of the biggest headaches for Attila was the constant stream of political intrigue bubbling beneath the surface. His own family could have given a Shakespearean drama a run for its money. Attila's sons were already jostling for power, eyeing their father's throne like a pack of hungry wolves circling a wounded stag. And then there were the chieftains, each one a potential ally or rival, depending on which way the wind was blowing. Loyalty was a scarce commodity, and Attila knew he had to keep his friends close and his enemies even closer. Externally, the pressures were no less daunting. The Roman Empire, despite its internal rot, was still a formidable foe, and Attila's relentless raids had left the Huns stretched thinner than a hipster's patience at a mainstream music festival. The once overflowing coffers of gold tribute were now under strain, as the Romans had finally started to wise up, fortifying their cities and making Attila work harder for his payday. The economic strain was palpable. After all, you can't keep feeding an empire on promises and past glories alone. And then came the betrayals. Oh, the betrayals. You'd think Attila was starring in a soap opera, with all the backstabbing going around. One particularly juicy incident involved the Gepids, a Germanic tribe that had been part of the Hunnic coalition. Their leader, Arderic, decided he'd had enough of playing second fiddle and led a rebellion against Attila. The Battle of Nedao in 454 was the result, a messy affair that saw many of Attila's former allies turning coats faster than a fashion model at a runway show. The Huns suffered a significant defeat, and the empire began its slow crumble. And here comes the kicker. Attila's demise was as unexpected as it was unglamorous. Forget about a heroic last stand or a dramatic battlefield exit. Nope, Attila exited stage left in 453 due to, wait for it, a nosebleed. That's right, the terror of Europe, the man who had laid waste to cities and nations, was felled by a simple nosebleed on his wedding night to a young bride named Ildiko. Talk about an anticlimactic ending. It was a reminder that even the mightiest of conquerors were still human, susceptible to the whims of fate and biology. With Attila gone, the empire he had painstakingly built began to dissolve like a sugar cube in coffee. His sons tried to hold the reins, but they lacked their father's shrewdness and authority. The Hunnic Empire, once a fearsome juggernaut, quickly fragmented into squabbling factions. The tribes that had once rallied under Attila's banner began to drift away, each seeking its fortune amidst the chaos of post-Hunnic Europe. In this turbulent period, the realities behind the legend became all too clear. The Huns had been a force of nature, but their power was always tied to the charismatic figure of Attila. Without him, the empire lacked cohesion and direction. It was a classic case of a personality-driven enterprise collapsing in the absence of its charismatic leader. The myth of Attila lived on, but the reality of his empire was a cautionary tale about the dangers of overextension and the fragility of power. As Europe adjusted to the post-Attila landscape, one couldn't help but marvel at the irony of it all. The very factors that had made Attila's rise possible, division, opportunism, and brute force, were now the ones leading to the downfall of his empire. The Huns, who had once been the ultimate disruptors, were now being disrupted themselves, their legacy left in the hands of historians and storytellers who would continue to weave their tales of terror and triumph. In our next installment, we'll explore the aftermath of Attila's empire and how the reverberations of his reign continue to shape the course of European history. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the fascinating world of post-Hunnic Europe, where the echoes of Attila's legacy still linger in the shadows. And so, the curtain falls on Attila's empire, but the echoes of his reign reverberate through history like the lingering notes of an unfinished symphony. The Hunnic Empire's implosion left a power vacuum in Europe, an absence that would stir the pot of geopolitical intrigue for decades. It was like pulling the plug on a chaotic party, leaving everyone scrambling to clean up the mess and figure out what really happened the night before. Let's talk about the aftermath. With the Huns out of the picture, the Germanic tribes, those perennial understudies in the drama of European power, took center stage. The Visigoths, Ostrogoths, Vandals, and Franks all jockeyed for position, eager to fill the void left by the departing Huns. It was like a medieval game of musical chairs, but with swords and the occasional betrayal thrown in for good measure. The Western Roman Empire, already teetering like a drunk at last call, finally crumbled in 476, a scant 23 years after Attila's death. Coincidence? Hardly. The Huns had been a catalyst, accelerating the decline of an already shaky empire. In the grand tapestry of history, Attila's reign was a pivotal thread. His campaigns had reshaped the map of Europe, forcing migrations and realignments that would echo through the centuries. The so-called barbarian invasions that followed were, in part, a ripple effect of the Hunnic disruptions. Tribes that had once been bullied into submission by Attila now found new opportunities to assert themselves, leading to the formation of the medieval kingdoms that would define Europe for generations. But let's not get too misty-eyed over this notion of the noble savage reshaping civilization. The reality is more nuanced and less glamorous. The Huns were not champions of cultural exchange. They were opportunistic raiders, and their legacy was one of destruction more than creation. The romanticized image of Attila as a misunderstood visionary is as much a fabrication as the idea of him single-handedly toppling Rome. He was neither the hero nor the villain of the piece, but rather a complex figure in a world full of shades of grey. And yet, the allure of Attila endures. Why? Perhaps because his story taps into that primal part of us that loves a good tale of defiance and rebellion. He was the ultimate outsider, challenging the status quo and marching to the beat of his own drum, or war drum, as it were. His legend is a potent cocktail of fear and fascination, and like all great stories, it contains just enough truth to keep us hooked. Now, let's dissect the legacy. Attila's reign wasn't just a footnote in the history of Europe. It set the stage for the Middle Ages, a period marked by feudalism, knightly orders, and the eventual rise of nation-states. The chaos he sowed disrupted the Roman infrastructure, making way for new systems of governance. His impact was like a hurricane that clears the landscape, allowing for new growth, albeit after a fair amount of destruction. Economically, the Hunnic raids left a scar on Roman society. The constant threat of invasion drained resources, led to inflated military expenditures, and strained the empire's coffers. Rome's tribute payments to Attila were a significant financial burden, contributing to the fiscal crisis that hastened its downfall. In many ways, the Huns were an ancient precursor to the modern concept of economic warfare, manipulating the threat of violence to extract wealth and concessions. Socially, the fear of the Huns reverberated through European culture. The Gothic and Germanic tribes that displaced the Romans carried with them tales of Hunnic terror, stories that would feed into the medieval psyche and color perceptions of what lay beyond the civilized world. The specter of the Huns would haunt European imagination for centuries, a bogeyman lurking in the shadows of history. So, how does history remember Attila? As with any great figure, depends on who's doing the remembering. To the Romans, he was the scourge of God, a fittingly dramatic title for a man who could make even the most stoic senator break a sweat. To the Huns, he was a unifying force, a leader who brought them to the height of their power. To modern audiences, he's a mix of myth and reality, a legendary figure whose story is equal parts history lesson and cautionary tale. You could say Attila's legacy is like a historical Rorschach test, revealing as much about our own biases and fears as it does about the man himself. We project onto him our own ideas of barbarism and civilization, of power and its corrupting influence. His story continues to captivate because it touches on timeless themes: the rise and fall of empires, the nature of leadership, and the fine line between hero and villain. In the end, Attila's tale is a reminder that history is both a mirror and a map, reflecting who we are as much as it guides us through the labyrinth of our past. His legacy is a testament to the power of narrative, the way stories shape our understanding of the world and our place within it. So next time you hear the name Attila the Hun, remember that behind the legend lies a complex reality, one that still resonates in the echoes of our collective history. The sun peeks over the horizon, painting the sky with a gradient of pinks and oranges. It's a new day in feudal Japan, around 1600, and you, a samurai, are already awake. Before you leap into romantic visions of sword fights and dramatic duels, let's clear up a misconception. Your life isn't all about wielding a katana and slicing through enemies like a hot knife through butter. No, the reality is a bit more nuanced. First things first, you sit in Zen-like meditation, a practice as essential as armor itself. You see, the samurai class wasn't just about physical prowess. Mental discipline was the cornerstone of Bushido, the way of the warrior. You focus on your breath, seeking the elusive balance between inner peace and the demands of your societal role. It's a moment of calm before the chaos, like the eye of a storm. For a samurai, meditation is not a luxury, but a necessity, a mental armor for the battles of the day. With your mind centered, it's time to fuel the body. Breakfast is simple yet hearty: steaming rice, a bit of grilled fish, and maybe some miso soup. It's not a lavish affair, but enough to sustain you through the morning's duties. You might even throw in some pickled plums if you're feeling fancy. This is not the feast of a lord, but it's functional, much like everything else in your life. After all, you're not a daimyo lounging in opulence. You're a samurai, the backbone of the feudal system. Now comes the part that Hollywood loves to glamorize: darning your armor. This isn't a quick process of just strapping on some shiny pieces and calling it a day. Each piece, from the kabuto helmet to the do chest armor, requires careful attention. It's like assembling a medieval jigsaw puzzle where every part protects a vital piece of the human anatomy. The average set weighs around 25 kilograms, so it's not exactly a featherweight ensemble. But before you get too carried away with images of gleaming, impenetrable suits, let's debunk another myth. Armor wasn't just metal. Yours is likely made of lacquered leather and iron plates, painstakingly laced together with silk cords. It's a testament to the marriage of function and artistry, a blend of protection and the aesthetic that only the Japanese could master. And don't forget the ceremonial aspect. Each piece is donned with a specific ritualistic respect, almost like a sacred rite. Now, you might think you're headed off to battle, but hold your horses. The truth is, many samurai spent more time managing land and serving as bureaucrats than swinging swords in epic battles. You're part of a complex social hierarchy, a class system that dictates your duties and obligations. While the daimyo, the feudal lords, rule vast tracts of land, you are the enforcers of their will, ensuring the peasants pay their taxes and the land remains productive. But here's where things get interesting. Contrary to popular belief, the samurai weren't just cold-blooded warriors. You are also expected to be literate and cultured, adept at poetry, calligraphy, and even tea ceremonies. This isn't just a quaint hobby. These skills are vital for navigating the intricate social and political networks of the time. Remember, your sword may protect you on the battlefield, but your wits and words are what safeguard your status and influence. The samurai class is a tapestry woven with duty, honor, and yes, a fair share of contradictions. You're a warrior in a society that highly values peace and order, a land manager in a feudal system that thrives on stability and productivity. It's a delicate balance, like walking a tightrope between tradition and the evolving demands of your time. In the quiet of the morning, before the day fully unravels, you reflect on your place in this world. You're not just a figure in armor. You're a living embodiment of a complex ethos that values discipline, loyalty, and honor above all else. As you step out into the world, the weight of your armor reminds you of the responsibilities you bear. It's a new day, but one thing remains constant: your role as a samurai, the guardian of both peace and order in this ever-changing landscape. As you step out into the world, the weight of your armor reminds you of the responsibilities you bear. The path to the local daimyo's residence is well-trodden, lined with the whispers of past samurai who have walked before you. But let's not get too caught up in the poetry of it all. We need to talk about something that doesn't get the Hollywood spotlight, the economic reality of being a samurai. Spoiler alert, it's less rich and famous and more rice and famous. You see, while you might be sporting a katana and armor that screams, "I mean business," your financial situation might be whispering, "I could really use a raise." The myth that samurai were rolling in wealth is just that, a myth. The real deal is most samurai lived on modest stipends paid in rice. Yes, rice. The grain that fuels your breakfast is also your currency. In fact, stipends were often measured in koku, a unit representing the amount of rice needed to feed one person for a year, about 150 kilograms. If you're lucky, you might earn a stipend of 10 koku a year. That's enough to feed your family, but not exactly enough to buy a second home in the countryside. Rice was the economic backbone of feudal Japan, doing double duty as both sustenance and salary. This reliance on rice made the samurai class less like the cash-flush knights of medieval Europe and more like subsistence farmers with fancy swords. And while rice might be a versatile grain, it doesn't exactly pay for those little luxuries in life, like additional armor repair or new silk cords for your armor. Inflation, not a chance. Just pray for a good harvest. Now, you might be wondering why rice, of all things, was so critical. Let's think of it as the Bitcoin of feudal Japan. Everybody's talking about it, but only a few truly understand its value. In a predominantly agrarian society, rice was the most reliable measure of wealth. Unlike the unstable currencies in parts of the world today, rice was tangible, necessary, and when stored properly didn't depreciate. It was the ultimate hedge fund, the only downside being its susceptibility to pests and the occasional mold. But back to the practicalities. You're en route to the daimyo's residence, where you'll fulfill your duties. You're not just a warrior, but a manager of lands, a collector of taxes, and a keeper of the peace. And yes, sometimes that means dealing with the economic pressures that come with the job. Picture this. You're responsible for ensuring the peasants under your watch produce enough rice not just for their survival, but also to satisfy the demands of the daimyo, who in turn has his own obligations to the shogun. It's a delicate balance, where the scales are tipped by factors as unpredictable as the weather. And as if that wasn't enough, you have to navigate the social hierarchy, where every action is scrutinized and every mistake could cost you dearly. The daimyo expects results, and if the rice isn't coming in as planned, it's your head on the chopping block. Figuratively, of course, though with a katana-wielding boss, one can never be too sure. Your role requires a keen understanding of diplomacy, economics, and a bit of luck. After all, a samurai's honor is as tied to his financial responsibilities as it is to his martial prowess. The pressure isn't just external. At home, your family looks to you to maintain their status and provide for their needs. Education for your children, upkeep of your armor, and the occasional social gathering all require resources. And while you might be a master of the battlefield, financial mastery is another beast entirely. It's a juggling act that leaves little room for error. Drop the ball, and the repercussions can be swift and unforgiving. As you approach the daimyo's estate, the imposing gates remind you of the authority he holds over your life. Yet, behind the grand door lies a shared reality. Everyone, from the lowliest foot soldier to the highest lord, is bound by the rigid economic framework of the feudal system. It's a system that demands much and gives little in return, a reminder that beneath the romantic veneer of samurai life lies a gritty, unyielding truth. The daimyo himself isn't immune to these pressures. While he might seem to live in opulence, his wealth is similarly tied to the productivity of the land. His power rests on his ability to maintain loyalty among his samurai, ensuring they are adequately compensated, or at least not disgruntled enough to consider switching allegiances. It's a precarious dance, where the right step can mean the difference between prosperity and ruin. Inside the estate, the atmosphere is one of controlled chaos. Officials scurry about, scrolls in hand, discussing matters of state, land, and of course rice. Here, decisions are made that will ripple through the domain, affecting both samurai and peasant alike. It's a world where power and poverty coexist, a testament to the complex web of obligations and responsibilities that define your existence. So, as you take your place among the other samurai, remember this. Your armor may protect your body, but it's your understanding of the economic and social landscape that shields your future. The life of a samurai is one of constant adaptation, a balancing act where tradition meets the harsh realities of survival. It's not just about wielding a sword, it's about wielding influence, ensuring your place in a world that's as unforgiving as it is fascinating. And with that, the day's work begins. A fresh chapter in the ongoing saga of samurai life, steeped in history and alive with possibility. As you navigate the duties that await, remember that you are more than just a warrior. You are a steward of a legacy, a guardian of a tradition that is as enduring as the rice that sustains it. As the morning chores wind down, your focus shifts from the estate's hustle and bustle to the training grounds. And here's where we bust another Hollywood myth. Samurai training wasn't all about perfecting that dramatic sword slash you've seen in every samurai flick ever made. Sure, the katana gets the spotlight, but midday brings a whole buffet of skill-sharpening activities that go beyond the blade. First on the agenda is horseback riding. Now, if you're picturing a leisurely gallop through cherry blossoms, hold that thought. You're not prepping for a scenic Instagram post. You're mastering the art of yabusame, or mounted archery. Imagine trying to shoot a target while bouncing up and down on a galloping horse. It's like trying to thread a needle on a roller coaster. Precision and balance are crucial, and let's just say, not every samurai is born a natural equestrian. And about those arrows, you're not just flinging sticks with feathers. Each arrow is a meticulously crafted piece of work, involving bamboo shafts and eagle feathers. The craftsmanship involved is as much a part of your training as the actual shooting. The target isn't just a bullseye. It's the embodiment of focus and intent, a testament to the discipline that Bushido demands. Speaking of Bushido, let's dive into that a bit. The way of the warrior is often romanticized as a noble code akin to chivalry. But the truth, it's more like a survival guide for a class that's expected to be both deadly and honorable. Bushido is a cocktail of loyalty, martial arts mastery, and personal conduct. It's less about being a knight in shining armor, and more about being a reliable cog in the feudal machine. Forget the poetic notion of fighting for glory. It's about maintaining the social order and keeping your head, literally and metaphorically. After a few hours of archery, strategy sessions call. This isn't some chess club meeting in disguise. It's serious business. Picture a room with scrolls unfurled, detailing battle formations and enemy weaknesses. You're not just memorizing moves, but learning to adapt, to think several steps ahead. It's a mental chess game where the stakes are life and death. Now, let's talk education. The stereotype of the brutish, illiterate samurai is as outdated as last season's kimono. Many samurai were well versed in the arts and literature, a necessity in a world where social interactions could be more dangerous than battlefield skirmishes. You're expected to engage in poetry, calligraphy, and the appreciation of no theater. And if you think calligraphy is just about pretty handwriting, think again. It's a disciplined art form, requiring focus and a steady hand, traits that are equally vital in combat. Philosophy is another pillar of your education. Confucianism, with its emphasis on duty and hierarchy, plays a significant role. It's like the ancient equivalent of a self-help book, guiding you through the maze of obligations that define your life. You study texts not just to quote them at parties, but to internalize their teachings, to navigate the treacherous waters of feudal politics with wisdom and grace. Or at least, that's the theory. After all this brainwork, it's time to stretch those muscles again. Sword practice, finally. But don't get too excited. It's not the theatrical spectacle you might imagine. It's repetitive, grueling, and all about muscle memory. You're perfecting the basics, the kind of fundamentals that might bore an onlooker but are crucial in the heat of battle. It's about honing reflexes, ensuring that when the time comes, your body reacts faster than your mind. With each swing of the barkan, the wooden practice sword, you're reminded of the weight of your real katana, the responsibility it represents. It's not just a weapon, but a symbol of your status and duty. The blade is an extension of your will, a reminder that your life is bound by the code you serve. As the sun begins its descent, the training winds down, and you're left to ponder the day's lessons. The life of a samurai is a paradox of peace and war, culture and combat. You're not just a warrior, you're a scholar, a diplomat, and a caretaker of tradition. It's a life that demands adaptability, where the only constant is change itself. And as you return to the estate, the weight of your responsibilities settles once more. You're part of a grand narrative, a living legacy that spans centuries. The armor may come off, but the role you play is never shed. Tomorrow promises more of the same, training, learning, and navigating the intricate web of feudal society. Yet, for all its demands, the life of a samurai holds a certain allure, a blend of duty and honor that endures through the ages. So, while the romanticized image of the samurai endures in modern culture, remember that behind the myth is a life of relentless discipline and unwavering commitment. You're not just preserving history, you're living it every single day. And with that, the day concludes, not with a dramatic battle, but with the quiet resolve that defines the true spirit of the samurai. As the sun dips lower, casting long shadows over the training grounds, you swap your barkan for something a little less glamorous, but infinitely more impactful, the tools of local governance. Yup, it's time to embrace the samurai's not-so-secret double life as a bureaucrat. If you ever thought the samurai were all about high-octane battles and zero paperwork, think again. The ink-stained world of administration awaits, and it's as crucial to your role as any duel. First stop, the local magistrate's office, a hub of activity that would make any modern government building look like a ghost town on a long weekend. Here, you help untangle the threads of feudal justice, a complex tapestry that, much like your armor, is both intricate and essential. The myth of the constantly battling samurai glosses over this significant aspect of their lives. The truth is, most of your afternoons are spent navigating the labyrinthine political structures that define your social standing. You've got land disputes to resolve, tax records to review, and the occasional peasant grievance to address. Think of it as medieval customer service, with you as the mediator, arbitrator, and occasionally the judge. The samurai were pivotal in maintaining societal stability, acting as the glue holding the feudal system together. You're not just a warrior, you're a cog in the grand machine of governance. Let's talk numbers. A typical samurai might oversee a village producing around 50 koku of rice annually. Remember, that's enough to feed 50 people for a year. You're responsible for ensuring a smooth collection process, because the last thing you need is a peasant revolt on your hands. And before you romanticize the idea of ruling over a quaint village, know this: managing land is less about sipping tea on verandas and more about ensuring no one's skimming off the top. Feudal Japan had its share of creative accounting practices, and you're here to make sure the books balance. The political structure is as rigid as it is hierarchical. At the top sits the shogun, with the daimyo, your boss, acting as the regional power broker. Below them, you, the samurai, and then the peasants. It's a chain of command that demands both respect and adherence to protocol. It's also a delicate balance of power, where any misstep can lead to instability. Your role in this chain, enforcer and mediator, ensuring that disputes are resolved and taxes are collected. You might think of this as a thankless task, but there's a certain satisfaction in maintaining order. Imagine a world where the slightest miscalculation in rice collection could lead to famine or unrest. A world where your decisions have immediate, tangible consequences. Governance isn't just about wielding power, it's about wielding it wisely. You're not just a samurai, you're a steward of stability, a guardian of the social contract that keeps chaos at bay. And then there's the matter of law and justice. Forget about swift, sword-in-hand justice. You're more likely to spend your time deliberating over legal scrolls than drawing your katana. The legal system is built on precedents and local customs, a a patchwork of rules that require careful navigation. You're expected to be both fair and firm, ensuring that justice is served without inciting further discord. It's a tightrope walk where your reputation is on the line, and each decision could ripple through the community. But let's not ignore the allure of the myth. The romantic image of the samurai as a lone warrior, dispensing justice with the edge of a blade, is powerful. It speaks to a universal desire for simplicity in a world rife with complexity. Yet the truth is far less glamorous and infinitely more nuanced. You're part of a system that values negotiation and diplomacy over brute force, where the pen, or in this case, the brush, is indeed mightier than the sword. As the afternoon wears on, you find yourself in the midst of a land dispute. Two peasants are arguing over a boundary, a line drawn in the dirt that separates one plot from another. It's a scenario that plays out countless times across the country, a testament to the human penchant for conflict over scarce resources. Your job: listen to both sides, examine the records, and render a judgment that is fair yet firm. It's not about who shouts the loudest, but who has the better claim. And sometimes you have to remind them who's really in charge. The resolution of such disputes requires a skill set that goes beyond martial prowess. It calls for patience, empathy, and a keen understanding of human nature. You're not just enforcing laws, you're interpreting them, applying them to real-world scenarios where the stakes are always personal. Each case is a puzzle, a challenge that tests your ability to balance tradition with practicality. And here's a little secret. While the samurai code of Bushido might emphasize honor and loyalty, the reality is that political savvy and a sharp mind are just as critical. It's not enough to be a master of the battlefield. You must also be a master of the boardroom, navigating alliances and rivalries with the same precision as you would a sword fight. As the sun begins its descent towards the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, you wrap up your administrative duties. It's a world where the myth and the mundane coexist, where the romanticized image of the samurai meets the gritty reality of feudal governance. You're not just a warrior, you're a diplomat, a judge, and an administrator, ensuring that the wheels of society keep turning smoothly. And as you head home, the weight of your responsibilities is both a burden and a badge of honor. You're part of a tradition that values stability and order, a legacy that stretches back centuries. The life of a samurai is a study in contrasts, a blend of the romantic and the real, where each day brings new challenges and opportunities. So, as the evening draws near, you reflect on the day's events. You're more than just a figure in armor. You're a steward of a complex system, a guardian of a way of life that's as intricate as it is enduring. And while the world may change, the essence of the samurai endures, a testament to the enduring power of duty, honor, and resilience. As the sun begins its final descent, the horizon ablaze with hues of deep orange and muted pink, the weight of the day's duties begins to lift. You return home, where the promise of a communal dinner awaits, a time to unwind and reflect on the tapestry of your existence, woven with duties as a samurai. But before you get too cozy with the idea of a grand feast, let's set the scene straight. This isn't a lavish banquet in a daimyo's hall, but a simple gathering with family or fellow retainers. Dinner in a samurai household is an exercise in minimalism, much like the rest of your life. We're talking rice, obviously, perhaps a bit of simmered vegetables, and if fortune smiles, some grilled fish. The meal itself is a reflection of your status, sustenance over splendor, necessity over indulgence. It's a time to recharge, not just physically, but mentally. The conversations at the table might veer from the mundane intricacies of land management to the philosophical musings inspired by the day's events. But let's not shy away from the romantic notion here. There's a certain charm in this simplicity. It's a scene that resonates through time, a warrior, weary from the day's toil, sharing a meal with kin. The quiet camaraderie, the unspoken bonds, these are the elements that fuel the romanticized image of the noble samurai. Yet beneath the surface lies a reality as stark as the meal itself. You're not feasting on opulence, you're merely sustaining the body for another day of service. As you savor each bite, your thoughts drift to the legacy of the samurai, the duality of legend and truth. The romanticized image, born from tales of valor and fierce loyalty, often glosses over the gritty realities you face. The truth is, the samurai weren't just lone wolves fighting for honor on the battlefield. They were integral to the social and political fabric of feudal Japan, a balance of warrior and administrator, poet and enforcer. The samurai's legacy is a complex tapestry, one that has been woven with threads of myth and reality. It's a narrative that continues to capture the imagination, even as the realities of history paint a less glamorous picture. You are part of a class that values discipline, honor, and duty above all else. Yet these ideals are often romanticized to the point of distortion. The notion of a samurai as a solitary swordsman, roaming the land to right wrongs, is a compelling story but far from the truth. The reality is a life steeped in structure and hierarchy, where loyalty to your lord and the rigid social order defines your every move. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the Meiji Restoration. This period, starting around 1868, marks the end of the samurai as a ruling class, but not the end of their influence. As modernization swept through Japan, the feudal system that had sustained the samurai for centuries began to crumble like an ancient fortress under siege. The introduction of conscription meant that the samurai's monopoly on military power was shattered, and with it, their economic base. Samurai stipends, once paid in rice, replaced with government bonds that quickly lost value as the country moved towards a cash economy. It was a seismic shift, akin to being told that your prized katana is now just a historical artifact, no longer the badge of honor it once was. For many samurai, this transition was as jarring as a cold splash of water, forcing them to adapt or fall by the wayside. Yet, even as their formal power waned, the cultural impact of the samurai endured. The ideals of Bushido, loyalty, honor, discipline, were woven into the very fabric of modern Japanese society. The romanticized image of the samurai became a powerful symbol of national identity, influencing everything from literature to politics. It's a testament to the enduring allure of the samurai myth, a narrative that continues to captivate and inspire well into the present day. You see, the samurai left behind more than just a legacy of warfare and governance. They left a cultural imprint that transcended the practicalities of their existence. Their influence is seen in modern Japan's emphasis on discipline and respect, principles that echo the core tenets of Bushido. And while the image of the samurai as a chivalrous knight might be a bit of a fairy tale, there's no denying the power of that story. It's a narrative that speaks to the human condition, the struggle between duty and desire, honor and ambition. As you sip on a cup of green tea, the steam curling in the cool evening air, you reflect on these themes. The world around you is changing, but the essence of the samurai, what they stood for and what they represented, remains. You're part of a lineage that values resilience and adaptability, qualities that have ensured the samurai's cultural survival even as their political power faded. In the quiet moments of the evening, as the stars begin to dart the night sky, you ponder the future. The life of a samurai has always been one of paradoxes, of contradictions between myth and reality. Yet, it is precisely these contradictions that make the story so compelling. The samurai were more than just warriors. They were custodians of a tradition that continues to resonate through the ages. And as the day comes to a close, you're left with a sense of continuity, a feeling that while the world may change, the core values that define the samurai will endure. It's a legacy that is as much about the past as it is about the future, a reminder that the stories we tell carry the power to shape our understanding of what it means to live with honor and purpose. So, as you prepare to retire for the night, the weight of the day's reflections settles gently upon you. You're more than just a guardian of peace and order. You're a keeper of a legacy that bridges the gap between history and mythology. And in a world that's constantly evolving, that legacy is a beacon guiding future generations as they navigate the complexities of their own journeys. In the end, the life of a samurai is a lesson in balance, in finding harmony between the demands of the moment and the enduring call of tradition. It's a life that, despite its many challenges, offers a profound sense of purpose, a purpose that, like the samurai themselves, remains undiminished by the passage of time. If you listen closely, you might just hear the whispers of ancient spirits weaving through the icy winds of the Arctic. Welcome to the world of Inuit mythology, where the tundra isn't just a frozen wasteland, but a vibrant tapestry of stories and spirits that have guided its people for millennia. Now, before you start picturing fluffy polar bears and igloos, let's dig a bit deeper. This isn't your average bedtime tale. This is survival, spirituality, and the ultimate lesson in resourcefulness wrapped in the frosty embrace of the North. Inuit spirituality is as practical as it is profound. It's not just about believing in spirits because they sound cool. It's about survival in one of the most hostile environments on Earth. Picture this. Temperatures can dip to a bone-chilling minus 60 degrees Fahrenheit with winds that'll slap you harder than reality itself. In such conditions, having a little spiritual guidance can't hurt, right? Enter Sedna, the sea goddess. She's the big kahuna of the Arctic waters, and you don't mess with her unless you want your fishing trip to turn into an episode of Lost. Sedna's story is as chilling as the waters she commands. According to legend, she was once a mortal woman who, through a series of unfortunate events involving a less-than-charming bird husband and a rather dramatic father, found herself tossed into the sea. Talk about family drama. But rather than sinking into oblivion, Sedna transformed. She became the ruler of the underwater world, her severed fingers morphing into the creatures of the sea. So, the next time you chomp on some Arctic char, give a nod to Sedna. She's the reason dinner's on the table, or on the ice, as it were. Why did the Inuit put so much stock in these tales? Well, imagine trying to make sense of the northern lights dancing above, the unpredictable wildlife, or the sudden storms that could wipe out your entire food supply. In a place where nature was both a provider and a punisher, having a narrative that explained these mysteries could mean the difference between life and death. It wasn't just about worship, it was about wisdom. These stories were the original survival guides, teaching respect for the environment long before it became a trendy hashtag. And it wasn't just Sedna in this spiritual lineup. The Inuit pantheon is like the Avengers of the Arctic, each spirit with its own role to play. There's Nanuk, the mighty polar bear spirit, who's probably the original influencer of strength and hunting prowess. Or take Sela, the spirit of the air, who's been monitoring climate change before it was a global concern. These spirits didn't just exist in myths. They were woven into the fabric of daily life, governing everything from hunting practices to social behavior. Now, let's get real for a second. It's easy to romanticize these legends as quaint stories from a bygone era, but let's not gloss over the grit. The Inuit faced challenges that would make modern survivalists weep. With no Amazon Prime for quick supplies, they relied on the land and sea, and these spirits were their guides. When the caribou migrated, or the fish seemed elusive, it wasn't just bad luck. It was a sign from the spirits. You think twice about skipping an offering to Sedna if it might mean the difference between feast and famine. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite the harshness of their environment, the Inuit didn't just survive, they thrived. Their spirituality wasn't just a coping mechanism. It was a sophisticated system of knowledge passed down through generations. Take the shamans, for instance. These were the original Arctic therapists, mediating between the physical and spiritual worlds with a skill that would make Dr. Phil envious. They interpreted signs, healed the sick, and ensured that the delicate balance between humans and spirits was maintained. A shaman's role was crucial, no pressure there. So, what can we learn from all this today? While we might not be battling Arctic blizzards on the daily, the Inuits' relationship with their environment offers a timeless lesson. Respect for nature, understanding the interconnectedness of life, and the wisdom to adapt. These aren't just old-school virtues. They're survival skills for the modern world. In a way, Inuit mythology isn't just about the past. It's a blueprint for the future. In the end, the spirits of the Arctic aren't just relics of a forgotten era. They're reminders of a world where every gust of wind and ripple of water had meaning. They speak to a resilience and ingenuity that, quite frankly, puts our modern conveniences to shame. So next time you find yourself grumbling about the weather, remember the Inuit and their spirits. They didn't just endure the elements, they embraced them, turning the unforgiving Arctic into a canvas for some of history's most enduring legends. More than just myths, these stories are a testament to the power of belief and the human spirit's capacity to thrive against all odds. So, as the icy winds of the Arctic carry whispers of ancient spirits, let's dive deeper into the who's who of the Inuit spirit world. Think of it as an exclusive tour through a supernatural red carpet event, where polar bears and air spirits have more clout than your average celebrity influencer. First up, let's talk about NanoArc. Not the latest app or gadget, Nanoark is the revered polar bear spirit, representing strength, hunting, and survival. In a world where missing a single hunt could mean game over, Nanoark was the ultimate role model. The Inuit believed that respecting Nanoark could influence their hunting success. If you didn't respect the bear, there was a good chance your next hunting expedition would be a bust. Nanoark wasn't just a myth. He was a practical guide to survival, with a side of spiritual insurance. Now, let's not forget about Tupilak. Before you picture a cuddly creature, let me stop you right there. Tupilak is more of a DIY supernatural project gone rogue. These are malevolent spirits conjured by shamans, often crafted from bones and animal parts to exact revenge on enemies. It's like sending a cursed email, but with more teeth and less Wi-Fi. The catch: if your enemy had a stronger shaman, your Tupilak could backfire. Talk about risky business. This wasn't just about spooky stories. It was a reflection of the social dynamics and conflicts within Inuit communities. And then there's Sela, the spirit of the air. Sela is the Arctic's original weatherman, responsible for the winds, weather, and even the health of the people. Forget about checking your weather app. Back then, it was all about reading Sela's moods. If Sela was upset, storms could brew, making life even tougher for those eking out an existence on the tundra. The Inuit respected Sela, not just for the weather forecasts, but for the deeper understanding of their ecosystem. Each of these spirits played a role that was as essential as it was mystical. They weren't just figments of an overactive imagination. They were part of a cultural toolkit for navigating the harsh realities of Arctic life. The Inuit didn't have the luxury of modern conveniences, so they turned to these spirits to fill the gaps in their understanding of the world. It was a system that blended spirituality with practicality, where myths became metaphors for survival strategies. To truly grasp the significance of these spirits, we need to look at the economic and social contexts of Inuit life. The Arctic isn't exactly known for its bountiful harvests, and with temperatures plummeting to -60 degrees Fahrenheit, every resource had to be maximized. The spirits were seen as allies in this endeavor. They guided the Inuit in everything from hunting and fishing to understanding the precarious balance of their environment. Nanoark, for instance, wasn't just a symbol of hunting prowess. He was a reminder of the respect needed towards the animals. The Inuit practiced a form of sustainable hunting long before it was a buzzword. They believed that showing respect to Nanoark and the bears would ensure that future hunts were successful. Wastefulness wasn't just frowned upon. It was believed to anger the spirits, which could lead to scarcity and hardship. This spiritual belief system also had a social function. By attributing successes and failures to the spirits, it provided a way to maintain harmony and avoid internal conflicts. If a hunt failed, it was seen as a sign of displeasure from the spirits rather than a personal failure. This collective understanding helped to diffuse blame and maintain community cohesion in a world where cooperation was crucial for survival. In terms of economics, the reliance on spirits also reflects the absence of formalized trade and currency. The Inuit operated on a barter system, and the spirits played a role in ensuring the balance of resources. By invoking the spirits, the Inuit were effectively managing their resources and ensuring that their needs were met without depleting the environment. It was a system rooted in respect and reciprocity, where the spiritual and economic were intertwined. Now, let's debunk a few myths while we're at it. There's a romanticized notion that the Inuit lived in perfect harmony with nature, guided by these benevolent spirits. While the respect for nature is true, life in the Arctic was anything but harmonious. The environment was unforgiving, and the spirits often reflected this harshness. For every benevolent spirit like Nanoark, there were darker forces like the Tupilak to remind the Inuit of the dangers of their world. The creation of Tupilak, for example, wasn't just a spooky tale. It was a reflection of real social tensions and the lengths to which people would go to protect or avenge themselves. It speaks to a world where survival was paramount, and even spiritual beliefs had to adapt to the realities of human conflict and competition. In the end, the Inuit spirit world offers a fascinating glimpse into how a culture can develop sophisticated systems of belief that are intricately tied to their environment and way of life. These spirits weren't just stories. They were lessons, warnings, and guides that helped the Inuit navigate the complex interplay of nature, society, and survival. As we continue our journey through Inuit mythology, remember that these tales are more than just folklore. They're a testament to human ingenuity and the capacity to adapt and thrive in even the harshest of environments. So, the next time you find yourself grumbling about the weather or the latest tech glitch, take a moment to appreciate the wisdom of the Inuit and their spirits. They remind us that sometimes the greatest survival guide is the one written in the stars, whispered by the wind, and carried in the heart. Speaking of whispers in the wind, let's talk about how these ancient tales have been swept up by the modern whirlwind of Hollywood and pop culture, sometimes with less than stellar results. Hollywood has a knack for taking indigenous stories and giving them a glossy makeover that's less about authenticity and more about box office appeal. Inuit mythology, with its rich tapestry of spirits and survival, was ripe for the picking. But did these cinematic adaptations do the original stories justice, or is it more like trying to fit a polar bear into a poodle sweater? Take, for instance, the 1988 film Asterisk, The White Dawn Asterisk. Here, we have a classic tale of culture clash, with three whalers getting cozy with an Inuit community. Sounds like a riveting cultural exchange, right? Well, the film does its best to portray the Inuit in a positive light, but let's just say it's about as authentic as a snowman in July. The narrative is driven more by Western perspectives than by Inuit voices, turning the rich complexity of Inuit culture into a backdrop for outside adventure. Even the portrayal of spiritual elements gets watered down, with little room for the deep, symbiotic relationship the Inuit have with their environment and spirits. Then there's the charming 2003 animated feature, Asterisk Brother Bear Asterisk. While undeniably heartwarming and visually stunning, it takes liberties that would make Sedna herself roll her eyes. The film's transformation of humans into animals to learn lessons of empathy and respect might echo the interconnectedness found in Inuit spirituality, but it draws heavily from pan-indigenous stereotypes rather than Inuit-specific lore. Let's not forget the singing moose, a fun touch, but more a nod to Disney whimsy than anything genuinely Inuit. It's as if Hollywood heard the term spirit animal and ran with it, without stopping to consider the profound implications these beliefs have in Inuit culture. You might wonder why these adaptations stray so far from the source material. Well, Hollywood's prime directive is entertainment, not education. It's easier to sell a simple, feel-good story than to dive into the complexities of a culture shaped by harsh realities. Plus, let's face it, legends of revenge-bound Tupilak aren't exactly family-friendly fodder. This sanitization process often strips the stories of their original grit and transformative power, leaving us with glossy shells that look nice but lack substance. Now, let's talk about the cultural impact of these misrepresentations. It's not just about inaccurate portrayals, it's about the erasure of authentic voices and narratives. When Hollywood takes the reins, the nuanced wisdom and resilience embedded in Inuit mythology can get lost in translation. This isn't just a minor oversight, it's a cultural disservice that perpetuates misunderstandings and stereotypes. By reducing complex spiritual beliefs to mere plot devices, these films can inadvertently diminish the richness of Inuit culture in the public eye. Moreover, these misrepresentations have real-world implications. They influence how audiences perceive indigenous cultures, often reinforcing the idea that they are relics of the past rather than vibrant, evolving societies. This can affect everything from policy-making to tourism, where myths overshadow realities, leading to shallow engagement rather than meaningful interaction. Think of it as the difference between reading a travel brochure and actually visiting a place. The brochure might get you there, but it's the experience that leaves a lasting impression. But let's not be all doom and gloom here. The silver lining is that these adaptations, despite their flaws, can raise awareness and spark interest in Inuit mythology. They can serve as a gateway for audiences to seek out the real stories, told by the Inuit themselves. And there's a growing movement within indigenous communities to reclaim and retell their stories through their own voices, using modern media as a platform. Projects like Asterisk, The Grizzlies Asterisk, a 2018 film about the transformative power of lacrosse in a small Inuit town, offer a more authentic glimpse into contemporary Inuit life and culture. It's a reminder that while Hollywood may fumble the ball, there's a resurgence of indigenous storytelling that's reclaiming the narrative with authenticity and pride. So, next time you catch a Hollywood film featuring Inuit mythology, take a moment to savor the spectacle, but also dig deeper. Seek out the source material, listen to Inuit voices, and appreciate the stories for what they truly are, a testament to human endurance, adaptability, and spiritual depth. After all, the true magic of these myths isn't found in CGI effects or catchy soundtracks, but in the enduring wisdom they offer in understanding our place in the world. Now, speaking of digging deeper, let's take a closer look at how Inuit spirituality wasn't just a collection of cool stories to share around the metaphorical campfire, or rather, the very literal, very necessary campfire. Instead, these beliefs were the backbone of their social structure, trading practices, and day-to-day survival in an environment where even your breath could freeze mid-air faster than you can say frostbite. First, let's get into the nitty-gritty of social structures. In the Inuit world, every community member, from the eldest to the tiniest toddler, had a role to play. This wasn't just about putting food on the table, although, let's be real, that was a huge part of it, but about maintaining harmony with the spirits. The shaman, for instance, was more than just a spiritual leader. They were the community's diplomat to the spirit world. Imagine having a job where one day you're mediating disputes between humans, and the next, you're negotiating terms with the spirits to ensure the seal hunt goes smoothly. No pressure, right? But wait, there's more. The shaman's role in maintaining social order was crucial. They were the original Arctic HR department, ensuring everyone kept in line with the spirit's wishes. If someone got a little too greedy or wasteful, it wasn't just a personal failing. It was a cosmic faux pas that could jeopardize the entire community's survival. The spirits were thought to be watching, ready to dole out consequences faster than you could say, seal blubber. Now, let's talk trade. In an environment where the nearest supermarket was a few millennia away, trade was vital. But forget about gold coins or paper money. The Inuit economy was all about barter, and belief played a key role. The Inuit traded goods like seal skins, whale blubber, and caribou meat, but the real currency was trust and reciprocity. You couldn't just waltz into another group's territory and expect to trade your wares without the right spiritual blessings. Talk about a high-stakes marketplace. The spirits were seen as the ultimate regulators of this trade, ensuring that exchanges were fair and equitable. If someone tried to cheat the system, it wasn't just bad business. It was an affront to the spirits, who might decide to send a blizzard your way as a not-so-gentle reminder to play fair. This spiritual oversight meant that Inuit trade was as much about maintaining relationships as it was about exchanging goods. In their world, every transaction was a testament to the interconnectedness of community, nature, and the supernatural. Economically, this system made a lot of sense. It wasn't just about survival. It was about sustainability. The Inuit had long understood what some modern economists still struggle with, the importance of keeping your resources in balance. They knew that overhunting or overfishing could lead to scarcity, so their spiritual beliefs reinforced the principles of conservation. It was like having a built-in environmental protection agency, but with more spiritual flair and fewer bureaucratic forms to fill out. But here's the kicker. These beliefs weren't just a quaint relic of the past. They were dynamic, adapting to the changing realities of Inuit life. As contact with European explorers and traders increased in the 19th century, so did the economic pressures. Suddenly, Inuit communities were thrust into a new world of trade goods like guns, metal tools, and even tobacco. This wasn't just a culture shift. It was a seismic jolt that reshaped the way the Inuit interacted with both the spirit world and each other. The introduction of new goods brought new challenges and opportunities. The Inuit had to navigate these changes while maintaining the delicate balance with their spiritual beliefs. Imagine trying to negotiate a trade deal with the spirits while also learning how to use a rifle. It was a juggling act that required adaptability and ingenuity, traits the Inuit had in spades. And as they adapted, so did their spiritual practices, proving that even ancient beliefs could evolve in the face of modern challenges. Now, let's debunk a romantic notion or two. It's easy to picture the Inuit as living in perfect harmony with nature, guided by these benevolent spirits. But let's not forget the harsh realities. The Arctic was, and still is, an unforgiving place. It was a world where survival was never guaranteed, and every day brought new challenges. The spirits were not just kindly overseers. They were capricious entities that could bring fortune or ruin in equal measure. This wasn't a cozy fairy tale. It was a gritty saga of survival against the odds. The creation of beings like the Tupilak wasn't just about spooky stories to keep children in line. It was a reflection of real social tensions. In a world where resources were limited, conflicts could arise over hunting grounds or trading routes. The Tupilak was a manifestation of these tensions, a reminder that even in the tight-knit communities of the Arctic, human nature could be as unpredictable as the northern winds. Yet despite these challenges, the Inuit demonstrated a resilience that was nothing short of remarkable. They didn't just survive, they thrived, crafting a culture that was as resourceful as it was rich in spirit. Their ability to adapt their beliefs and practices to new realities is a testament to the strength of their culture and the depth of their understanding of the world around them. In the end, Inuit spirituality wasn't just about myths or rituals. It was a practical guide to living in harmony with the land and each other, a lesson that remains as relevant today as it was centuries ago. As we continue to explore the intricacies of Inuit mythology and spirituality, remember that these stories are more than just ancient tales. They're a window into a world where belief was as vital as a good pair of snowshoes. And spoiler alert, we'll soon delve into how these beliefs are being preserved and revitalized in the modern era, proving that while the Arctic may be cold, the spirit of its people remains as warm and enduring as ever. Stay tuned as we shift our gaze from the chilling winds of the Arctic past to the bustling present. One thing is clear. Inuit mythology is not just a relic of history, but a living, breathing testament to resilience and adaptation. You might think these tales will be as frozen in time as the glaciers, but you'd be wrong. In today's world, Inuit mythology is finding new life in unexpected places, from art to activism, proving that these stories are as relevant as ever. Let's start with contemporary adaptations. You might picture ancient myths as dusty tomes tucked away in libraries, but the Inuit have flipped the script. Take the vibrant artwork of Annie Puduguk, a contemporary Inuit artist whose work has gained international acclaim. Her pieces are a kaleidoscope of color and tradition, weaving in elements of mythology with modern Inuit life. It's like seeing Sedna and Nanuaq take a stroll through a 21st century Arctic town. Imagine Sedna in a parka instead of her underwater throne. Puduguk's work isn't just art. It's a dialogue between the past and present, reminding us that tradition can coexist with the modern world. Then there's the realm of literature. Inuit authors like Aluduk Aipali have taken the baton, crafting stories that echo the themes of their ancestors while addressing contemporary issues. Aipali's writing, rich with humor and introspection, brings the spirit world to life in a way that resonates with today's readers. It's a reminder that while the scenery may have changed, the core of these stories, respect for nature, community, and balance, remains timeless. By blending traditional narratives with modern storytelling, these authors ensure that the heartbeat of Inuit mythology continues to echo through the ages. Inuit mythology also plays a critical role in cultural identity and environmental awareness. Amidst the global climate crisis, these stories offer a powerful narrative about the interconnectedness of life and the urgent need to protect our planet. The Inuit have long understood the delicate balance of their ecosystem, and their myths reflect this wisdom. Spirits like Sela, who governs the weather, serve as a poignant reminder of the forces at play in our environment. It's the ultimate told you so from a culture that recognized climate change before it was a trending topic. This environmental consciousness isn't just theoretical. It's woven into the fabric of Inuit activism. Groups like the Inuit Circumpolar Council are at the forefront of advocating for indigenous rights and environmental protection, using the stories and values passed down through generations as a foundation. They remind us that the myths of old are more than stories. They're a call to action. It's a testament to the enduring power of these tales, showing that even in the face of modern challenges, the wisdom of the spirit still guides decisions. But let's not sugarcoat it. The journey to preserve and revitalize Inuit mythology in today's world hasn't been all smooth sailing. The impact of colonization, commercial exploitation, and cultural appropriation have posed significant challenges. These forces have threatened to erase indigenous identities, but the Inuit have shown remarkable resilience. Through education and cultural initiatives, they are reclaiming their narratives, ensuring that their stories are told by their own voices. Take, for example, the Nunavut government's inclusion of Inuit Korjamaja traditional knowledge, in their policies. This is more than a symbolic gesture. It's a concrete step towards integrating ancient wisdom into modern governance. By valuing the insights of their ancestors, the Inuit are crafting a future that respects their past while embracing innovation. It's a balancing act that challenges the notion that tradition and progress are mutually exclusive. And here's a twist for you. The digital age, often a herald of cultural homogenization, has become an unexpected ally in the preservation of Inuit mythology. Social media platforms and digital archives are empowering Inuit communities to share their stories globally, reaching audiences far beyond the icy tundra. It's a testament to the adaptability of these myths, proving that the ancient spirits can thrive in the age of Wi-Fi and hashtags. Now, let's debunk a myth about these myths. It's tempting to view Inuit mythology as purely spiritual, detached from the practicalities of daily life. But in reality, these stories are deeply intertwined with survival strategies, social cohesion, and economic practices. They are not just tales told by the fire. They are blueprints for thriving in one of the harshest environments on Earth. The spirits aren't just mystical beings. They're reflections of the real challenges faced by the Inuit, offering guidance and wisdom for navigating life's complexities. In conclusion, the legacy of Inuit mythology is a testament to the power of storytelling in shaping cultural identity and resilience. These stories are not static relics, but dynamic narratives that evolve with the times. They remind us that while the world may change, the values of respect, community, and harmony with nature are as relevant as ever. As we look to the future, the spirit of the Arctic continues to inspire, challenge, and guide us, proving that the true magic of these myths lies not in their age, but in their enduring wisdom. So, as we wrap up this exploration of Inuit mythology, think of it not just as a journey through the past, but as a roadmap for the future. Whether you're navigating the harsh winds of the Arctic or the complexities of modern life, remember the lessons of the spirits. They've been guiding the Inuit for millennia, and there's no reason they can't offer us a little guidance too. Here's to the stories that transcend time, the wisdom that defies the elements, and the resilience that defines the human spirit. In the bustling heart of Renaissance Florence, 1519, a baby named Catherine de' Medici was born into a family that was practically the Rockefeller dynasty of its day. The Medici clan didn't just swim in money, they practically invented it. Their banking empire was a powerhouse that made the Medici name synonymous with wealth, influence, and of course, a fair share of feuds. And little Catherine, she was destined to become a key player in the soap opera that was European royalty. But before we dive into her story, let's set the scene. Italy in the early 16th century wasn't the unified country we know today. It was a jigsaw puzzle of city-states and duchies, each with its own set of rules, leaders, and occasionally armies. Florence, where Catherine was born, was a cultural and financial hub. Think of it as the Silicon Valley of the Renaissance, but with more fresco painting and less coding. The Medici were the overlords of this bustling city, but their power came with strings attached, political alliances, betrayals, and enough backstabbing to fill a Game of Thrones season. Now, across the Alps, France was another beast altogether. A patchwork of territories under a single monarch, it was a kingdom ripe with its own intrigues, power struggles, and yes, scandals. The French court was a maze of political maneuvering, where alliances were as fragile as a glass of the finest Burgundy wine. Enter Catherine, who, at just 14, was carted off to France to marry Henry, Duke of Orleans, in 1533. This wasn't a fairy tale wedding where love was the main course. Oh no, this was a politically charged buffet of ambition and alliances. The marriage was orchestrated by Pope Clement Roman VII, a Medici himself, who thought it was a brilliant way to cement ties with France. It was less about happily ever after, and more about strategically ever after. Catherine's arrival in France was like stepping onto a chessboard where everyone had an agenda. She was a pawn in a larger game, but spoiler alert, she would eventually become one of the most formidable queens France would ever know. But first, she had to survive the French court, a place where niceties were rare and enemies were as plentiful as the tapestries on the walls. Now, let's talk about Henry, her new husband. If we're being honest, Henry probably wasn't writing any love sonnets for Catherine. His heart, and most of his attention, was elsewhere, with his long-time mistress, Diane de Poitiers. Diane was 20 years his senior, but wielded a charm and influence that made her a fixture in Henry's life, and by extension in Catherine's. Imagine being a teenager in a foreign land, married to a man who was publicly infatuated with someone else. Talk about awkward. Despite this less-than-ideal start, Catherine had some serious survival skills. Navigating the French court was like walking a tightrope, and she managed it with grace and cunning. She observed, learned, and bided her time, quietly enduring the humiliation of Diane's presence. Diane wasn't just Henry's lover. She was his confidante, advising him on matters of state, and even taking charge of the royal household. In any other scenario, you'd expect a clash of the titans between wife and mistress, but Catherine played the long game. She knew patience was her ally. Catherine's early years in France were marked by a lack of power and influence, a stark contrast to the Medici legacy she had left behind. Her marriage was intended to strengthen the ties between the Medici family and the French crown, but it didn't immediately translate into personal authority. The court viewed her with suspicion and sometimes outright disdain, treating her as an outsider. Her Italian origins were a point of contention. After all, who trusted the Italians with their fancy food and superior art? The French court was a place where xenophobia was practically a pastime. Despite these challenges, Catherine's intelligence and resilience were her secret weapons. She immersed herself in the intricate dance of court politics, understanding the dynamics and learning who held the real power. She cultivated relationships with key figures, adopting a strategy that would serve her well in the years to come. Catherine wasn't just a passive player. She was a keen observer, taking mental notes and preparing for the right moment to assert herself. One of the myths surrounding Catherine is that of the Poison Queen, woman who allegedly dabbled in dark arts and concocted lethal elixirs to eliminate her enemies. It's a tantalizing tale, but like many historical myths, it's more fiction than fact. Catherine was no sorceress. She was a strategist who understood the power of perception. She may have owned a collection of exotic spices and herbs, standard for any Renaissance noble with a taste for the finer things, but there's no credible evidence that she ever turned them into deadly potions. The real magic of Catherine de Medici lay in her ability to adapt and survive in an environment that was often hostile. Her patience wasn't just a virtue, it was a necessity. She played the courtly game with a long-term vision that few could match. While her husband was distracted by Diane's charms, Catherine was laying the groundwork for her future influence. Catherine's story is a reminder that history is often more complex than the legends it spawns. She was a woman caught in a web of political intrigue, navigating a world where her gender and foreign origins were significant obstacles. Yet she managed to carve out a space for herself, defying expectations and proving that she was more than just a Medici pawn. As Catherine's life at the French court unfolded, she remained largely in the shadows, watching, learning, and preparing for the moment when she could step into the light. Her early struggles were just the beginning of a journey that would see her rise to power and become one of the most influential figures in French history. But that's a tale for another time, as Catherine's story is far from over. Stay tuned for the next installment, where the plot thickens and Catherine's true power begins to emerge. The curtain rises on a new act in Catherine de Medici's life, as the death of Henry Roman II in 1559 transformed her from a sidelined wife into a political powerhouse. Henry's death was a classic case of death by tournament, a freak jousting accident that left Catherine with a crown and a colossal headache. Her teenage son, Francis Roman II, ascended the throne, but let's not kid ourselves. At just 15, he wasn't exactly seasoned in the art of governance. It was Catherine who had to step out of the shadows and take control. Being the Queen Mother wasn't a cushy gig. France was a kingdom teetering on the edge of chaos, with religious tensions simmering like a pot about to boil over. The French wars of religion were looming, a series of conflicts that would pit Catholics against Huguenots, French Calvinist Protestants, and make Game of Thrones look like a Sunday picnic. Catherine found herself at the center of this brewing storm, juggling the delicate task of keeping the kingdom intact while her son was nominally in charge. Here's where things get juicy. Catherine's political maneuvering was both a masterclass in strategy and a recipe for scandal. As regent, she had to navigate a minefield of factions, each vying for influence over the young king. It was like herding cats, but with more swords and less fur. The Guise family, staunch Catholics, were one of the dominant forces at court, and they had an eye on the throne like a hawk on a mouse. On the other side were the Bourbons, who leaned Protestant and weren't shy about it. Catherine had to keep these players from tearing France apart, all while maintaining her son's fragile grip on power. Her approach was classic Medici, a blend of diplomacy, intrigue, and occasional ruthlessness. She played both sides like a virtuoso, trying to balance Catholic and Protestant interests to prevent full-scale war. But let's be real, this was less about religious conviction and more about keeping the kingdom from imploding. Catherine's goal was stability, not sainthood. Despite her efforts, Catherine's reputation took a hit. She was often blamed for the very chaos she tried to control, a fact that would make even the most patient saint roll their eyes. People whispered that she was pulling the strings behind the throne, a puppet master manipulating her son and the court. The irony. She was trying to prevent the puppet show from turning into a full-blown circus. The term Queen Mother might sound regal, but Catherine's reality was far from glamorous. She had to deal with the economic fallout of endless wars, juggling a royal budget that was tighter than a corset. France's finances were in shambles, and the cost of maintaining a royal court was astronomical. We're talking thousands of livres just to keep the lights on, figuratively speaking, of course, since electricity was a few centuries away. Catherine's regency was marked by a series of edicts and decrees aimed at quelling religious tensions, but they often had the opposite effect. The Edict of Amboise in 1563 tried to grant limited religious freedoms to Huguenots, but it was about as popular as a skunk at a garden party. It satisfied no one and left everyone grumbling. Catherine's attempts at compromise were viewed with suspicion, and many thought she was secretly siding with the Protestants, an accusation that could get you more than a few dirty looks in staunchly Catholic circles. And then there was the infamous St. Bartholomew's Day massacre in 1572, a bloody event that stained Catherine's legacy forever. Thousands of Huguenots were killed in Paris and throughout France, a massacre that seemed to spin out of control. Some say Catherine orchestrated it. Others claim she was caught in the tide of events she couldn't stop. Either way, her name became synonymous with the massacre, a legacy she couldn't shake off. Catherine's role in these religious wars is often painted in black and white, but the truth is murkier. She wasn't a zealot. She was a pragmatist caught in a whirlwind of fanaticism. Her goal was simple: keep her sons on the throne and France from descending into anarchy. The fact that she became a scapegoat for the era's violence is a testament to the precarious nature of power and the fickle winds of public opinion. But despite the chaos, Catherine was a force to be reckoned with. Her political acumen kept her sons on the throne through multiple reigns, a feat that would leave most modern politicians green with envy. She was a woman of contradictions, both a peacemaker and a war strategist, a mother fighting for her children's legacy, and a queen trying to keep a fractured kingdom together. As the wars of religion dragged on, Catherine's influence only grew. She became a symbol of stability in a world that seemed hell-bent on tearing itself apart. Her story is a reminder that history isn't a neat tale of heroes and villains. It's a complex web of human ambition, fear, and survival. Catherine de' Medici walked that tightrope with an uncanny balance, a testament to her resilience and cunning. In the end, Catherine's life was a blend of triumphs and tragedies, a saga more compelling than any fiction. Her journey from pawn to power broker is a testament to the enduring spirit of a woman who refused to be sidelined by history. As her story unfolds further, we'll see how her legacy shaped the future of France, proving that the past is never truly past, and that the echoes of history continue to reverberate through time. Stay tuned for the next chapter, where Catherine's relentless pursuit of power meets the harsh realities of a kingdom in turmoil. As Catherine de' Medici's life unfolded, she became not only a political powerhouse, but also a significant patron of the arts, shaping the French Renaissance in ways that still resonate today. Picture this: a queen who, amidst the chaos of religious wars and political intrigue, had the audacity and the savvy to turn her court into a cultural beacon. Forget the notion of Catherine as merely a scheming regent. She was also an architect of elegance, a tastemaker with a vision that transcended mere survival. Let's start with Catherine's piece de résistance, the Tuileries Palace. Commissioned in 1564, this was Catherine's attempt to leave a lasting mark on Paris. She wanted a residence that screamed opulence, a sanctuary of sophistication amidst the urban sprawl. The Tuileries wasn't just about bricks and mortar. It was a statement. Designed by the Italian architect Philibert de Elorme, the palace was a mix of Italianate flair and French grandeur, boasting lavish gardens that made Versailles look like a backyard project. It was a costly endeavor, with expenses running into the tens of thousands of livres, a small fortune, even by royal standards. But for Catherine, it was worth every penny. Catherine's patronage extended beyond architecture. She was an avid supporter of the arts, nurturing a court that was a veritable Renaissance think tank. Musicians, painters, and poets flocked to her like moths to a flame, eager for her patronage and the prestige it conveyed. She introduced ballet to France, a dance form that would later become a cultural staple. Talk about leaving a legacy on the dance floor. Catherine's court was a melting pot of creativity, a place where innovation thrived under the protective wing of her influence. And then there's her influence on French cuisine. Catherine was an Italian at heart, and she brought a taste of her homeland with her when she crossed the Alps. Forget the notion that the French invented haute cuisine. Catherine's chefs were the original culinary maestros, whipping up dishes that would make even today's top chefs green with envy. Her introduction of forks to the French court was revolutionary, because who wants to eat with their hands when you can dine with style? She also popularized the use of truffles, artichokes, and various sauces that remain staples in French gastronomy. The next time you're indulging in a gourmet meal, tip your hat to Catherine's culinary foresight. Now, let's tackle the myths that swirl around Catherine like a fog. Tales of her dabbling in the occult and concocting poisons are as tantalizing as they are overblown. It's easy to see why these stories gain traction. After all, who doesn't love a good witchy narrative? But the truth is far less sinister. Catherine was no more a poisoner than she was a sorceress. The rumors likely stemmed from her interest in astrology and her reliance on the advice of astrologers like the famed Nostradamus. Sure, she might have had a penchant for horoscopes, but who doesn't indulge in a little stargazing now and then? The idea of Catherine as a poison queen is more fiction than fact. Yes, she had access to apothecaries and their exotic concoctions, but so did everyone else in the royal court. Renaissance noble life was practically a chemistry experiment, with potions and elixirs flowing as freely as wine. There was a fine line between medicine and poison at the time, and accusations of foul play were as common as courtly gossip. Catherine's real weapon was her intellect, not some mythical vial of death. Let's not forget the economic context of Catherine's reign. France was in financial turmoil, and Catherine had to navigate a kingdom with a treasury that was emptier than a pauper's pockets. The wars had drained resources, and the cost of maintaining a regal lifestyle was astronomical. Catherine had to be more than just a cultural patron. She was also a financial strategist, juggling debts and managing the court's expenditures with the precision of a Renaissance accountant. Catherine's legacy in the arts and architecture was more than just a personal passion. It was a strategic move that helped solidify her influence. By fostering a vibrant cultural scene, she created an image of stability and sophistication that transcended the bloody reality of her reign. It's a reminder that history is as much about perception as it is about facts. Catherine understood the power of legacy, and she wielded it with the expertise of a master artist. As we continue to unravel the story of Catherine de Medici, it's clear that she was a woman of many layers. Her patronage of the arts wasn't just a footnote in her life story. It was a testament to her vision and her ability to transform adversity into opportunity. In the grand tapestry of history, Catherine was both the weaver and the design, crafting a narrative that was as intricate as it was enduring. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into her world, where art, politics, and power collide in a saga that still echoes through time. As we dive into the next chapter of Catherine de Medici's life, let's address that infamous blot on her resume, the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre of 1572. Now, if you thought Catherine's story was all courtly ballet and kitchen innovations, brace yourself. We're about to take a detour into one of history's bloodier alleyways. Picture Paris, in August 1572, a city teetering on the edge of chaos like a tightrope walker with vertigo. The air was thick with tension, the kind that makes even seasoned politicians sweat through their doublets. This was no ordinary summer. It was wedding season, and not just any wedding. We're talking about the royal marriage of Catherine's daughter, Marguerite de Valois, to Henry of Navarre, a Protestant. This alliance was supposed to be a masterstroke of diplomacy, a handshake between warring factions. But as history often teaches us, the road to hell is paved with good intentions and fancy wedding invites. Let's set the stage for this matrimonial mess. France was a powder keg of religious tension, with Catholics and Huguenots, French Protestants, eyeing each other like cats and dogs trapped in a small room. The marriage was intended to douse the flames of conflict, but instead it lit the fuse for one of the bloodiest massacres in early modern Europe. Talk about a wedding to remember. So, how did a celebration turn into a slaughterhouse? Here's the lowdown. Just days after the nuptials, as Parisians nursed their hangovers, a plot unfolded to assassinate Gaspard de Coligny, a leading Huguenot noble and the groom's ally. It was a botched job, leaving Coligny wounded but very much alive. The failed hit ignited fears of a Protestant backlash, and that's when things spiraled out of control faster than a runaway carriage. The exact role Catherine played in the ensuing carnage is murky, wrapped in layers of historical hearsay and politically charged narratives. Some accounts paint her as the mastermind, the puppet master pulling strings from behind her regal curtains. Others suggest she was simply caught in a storm of events she couldn't control. What we do know is that, on the night of August 23rd, the decision was made to eliminate Huguenot leaders, allegedly to prevent an uprising. What followed was a horrific bloodbath, as Catholic mobs took to the streets, slaughtering Protestants with a zeal that would make even the most hardened warrior blanch. Numbers are tricky here, but estimates suggest that anywhere from 3,000 to 10,000 Protestants were killed in Paris alone, with the violence spreading to other cities like an infectious disease. The massacre lasted several days and left a permanent scar on France, a grim reminder of the deadly cocktail of religion and politics. It's one of those events that makes you wonder if history is written by the victors or just the least bloodstained. Now, you might be wondering, was Catherine really the villain she's made out to be? The answer isn't as black and white as we'd like. It's more like a murky shade of grey, with a hint of Renaissance intrigue. Catherine was a pragmatic politician, more interested in keeping her sons on the throne than in religious dogma. Her actions, whether complicit or coerced, were driven by a desire for stability in a kingdom that seemed hell-bent on self-destruction. What's clear is that the massacre had a profound impact on Catherine's legacy. Her reputation took a nosedive, transforming her from a savvy regent to a figure synonymous with bloodshed. The massacre became a propaganda tool used by Protestant factions to demonize her, while Catholic supporters either downplayed her involvement or justified it as a necessary evil. In the end, Catherine was left holding the bag, a scapegoat for the era's fanaticism. Let's take a moment to appreciate the economic and political quagmire Catherine had to navigate. France was already in the throes of financial strain, with the wars of religion draining the royal coffers like a sieve. Maintaining a court, funding military campaigns, and managing a fractured kingdom was no small feat. The massacre only added fuel to the fire, exacerbating divisions and further destabilizing the monarchy. In the aftermath, Catherine's focus shifted to damage control. She employed her diplomatic skills to mend fences with surviving Huguenots, a task akin to patching a sinking ship with a teaspoon. Yet, despite the odds, she managed to maintain a semblance of order, a testament to her tenacity and political acumen. Catherine was nothing if not resilient, a phoenix rising from the ashes of her own controversies. As we ponder Catherine's role in this dark chapter, it's worth noting that history often judges women in power more harshly than their male counterparts. Catherine wasn't the only ruler to face religious violence, but her gender and foreign origins made her an easy target for vitriol. Her story is a reminder that power is a double-edged sword, and those who wield it must walk a fine line between authority and accountability. In the grand tapestry of history, the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre serves as a cautionary tale of how quickly alliances can crumble and how fragile peace truly is. It's a sobering reflection on human nature, a testament to our capacity for both greatness and horror. As we continue to explore Catherine's life, we'll see how this event shaped her final years and influenced the legacy she left behind. The story isn't over yet, so stay tuned as we delve deeper into the life of a queen who defied the odds and left an indelible mark on history. With the spectre of the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre looming large, Catherine de Medici's later years were marked by a relentless pursuit of peace in a France fractured by religious and political strife. Imagine trying to patch up a torn tapestry with thread made of spider silk. Nearly impossible, but utterly necessary. Catherine was no stranger to impossible tasks, though. As the mother of 3 French kings, Francis Roman II, Charles Roman IX, and Henry Roman III, she had spent decades juggling the demands of power, diplomacy, and the ever-present threat of civil war. Catherine's primary focus in her twilight years was maintaining a semblance of stability in a kingdom that seemed perpetually on the brink of collapse. The French wars of religion were like an unwelcome house guest who never left, and Catherine was determined to play the role of mediator. She was the ultimate pragmatist, willing to negotiate with anyone if it meant keeping her sons on the throne and the kingdom intact. Her efforts weren't always successful, but they were tireless. One of her key strategies was convening peace talks in the form of the Estates General, a kind of medieval brainstorming session where representatives from different social classes came together to discuss the kingdom's issues. Although these meetings were often more talk than action, they were a crucial platform for dialogue in a time when swords spoke louder than words. Catherine's ability to bring diverse factions to the table was a testament to her diplomatic skills that were honed from years of navigating the treacherous waters of the French court. Despite her best efforts, Catherine's reputation as the Black Queen persisted. The moniker was as sticky as it was unfair, painting her as a sinister figure with a penchant for plotting. But let's set the record straight. The so-called Black Queen wasn't a villain twirling her mustache in a dark tower. She was a mother fighting to keep her family in power and her country from tearing itself apart. The legend of the Black Queen was more about fear and misogyny than reality, a convenient scapegoat for a society grappling with its own demons. As Catherine's health began to decline, her influence waned, and the political landscape shifted around her. Her son Henry Roman III faced mounting challenges, including opposition from the ultra-Catholic Holy League and the Protestant Huguenots. It was a precarious balancing act, and Catherine, ever the strategist, did her best to guide her son through the minefield. But by the late 1580, the tide of history was turning, and Catherine's one-scion grip on power was slipping. Catherine's death in January 1589 marked the end of an era. She passed away at the Chateau de Blois, surrounded by the opulence she had cultivated, but overshadowed by the political chaos she had tried to quell. France was left in a state of uncertainty, with Henry Roman III assassinated later that year, and the throne eventually passing to Henry Roman IV, a Protestant who famously converted to Catholicism to secure his rule. His pragmatic declaration, "Paris is worth a mass," would have surely brought a wry smile to Catherine's face. Despite her death, Catherine's influence lingered like the scent of perfume in a crowded ballroom. Her efforts to foster peace, nurture the arts, and maintain the Valois dynasty left a lasting mark on French history. She wasn't just a queen, she was a cultural architect, a political tactician, and yes, a formidable matriarch who navigated the choppy seas of power with aplomb. Her legacy is a reminder that history is more than just a series of events. It's the story of people, their choices, and the impact they leave behind. Catherine's life also serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of myth-making. The stories that surround her, the Poison Queen, the Black Queen, are as much about the fears and biases of her contemporaries as they are about her actions. They highlight the enduring human tendency to simplify complex figures into archetypes, to focus on the sensational rather than the substantive. But the truth is never so neat, and Catherine's real story is one of resilience and resourcefulness in the face of adversity. Her impact on European history is undeniable. By holding France together during one of its most turbulent periods, she helped shape the future of the continent. Her patronage of the arts left an indelible mark on French culture, influencing everything from architecture to cuisine. and her diplomatic efforts, while not always successful, laid the groundwork for the eventual peace that would come with the Edict of Nantes in 1598. So, what's the takeaway from Catherine de Medici's remarkable life? Perhaps it's the recognition that history is a tapestry woven from both triumph and tragedy, and that those who navigate its complexities with skill and determination leave a lasting legacy. Catherine was a woman who defied the limitations of her time, a figure who transcended the myths and legends that sought to define her. She was, in every sense, a queen who wielded power with a deft hand and a sharp mind. In the grand scheme of things, Catherine's story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of legacy. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there are those who strive to create order from chaos, to bridge divides, and to leave the world a better place than they found it. And as we close the book on Catherine de Medici's life, we're left with a portrait of a woman who was both a product of her time and a force of nature, a queen who shaped the course of history with grace, wit, and an unyielding will. In the grand tapestry of history, the Song Dynasty was that peculiar era where a leaf in heart water became more than an accidental herbal brew. It transformed into a cultural icon, a symbol of status, and a political chess piece. If you're imagining a serene time where emperors sipped tea in peaceful contemplation, hold that thought. This was China, circa 960 to 1279 A.D., where tea was not just a drink, but a whole economy, and a surprisingly contentious one at that. Tea's rise from a medicinal sidekick to the headliner of social life is nothing short of a plot twist worthy of a Netflix series. Initially, tea was the go-to elixir for ailments, prescribed like some sort of leafy NY quill. But during the Song Dynasty, the Chinese took their tea game to an entirely different level. It wasn't just about health anymore. Tea became the social lubricant of choice, fueling conversations, negotiations, and let's face it, probably a few gossip sessions too. Enter Emperor Huizong, the ultimate tea enthusiast, or should I say, tea fanatic. This guy was so into his tea that running a country seemed like a side gig. He penned the treatise on tea, not exactly a light read, but rather an ode to the art of tea-making. Huizong was less about military strategy and more about perfecting the froth on his tea. Under his reign, tea parties became the medieval equivalent of a hipster cafe meetup, complete with competitions for the best brews. Forget ruling with an iron fist. Huizong ruled with an iron teapot. But let's not get too swept up in the romance of it all. While tea was bridging social gaps and creating new cultural norms, it was also a cash cow for the government. Tea taxes were the empire's bread and butter, or should I say, dumplings and tea. It wasn't just a matter of taste, it was a matter of revenue. The Song Dynasty saw a booming tea trade, and the government wasn't about to miss out on its cut. Tea taxes contributed significantly to the state coffers, funding everything from infrastructure projects to military campaigns. So, while Emperor Huizong was busy perfecting his tea ceremony, his bureaucrats were busy counting the coins it brought in. Now, some might think of this era as the golden age of tea, yet it was also an age of exploitation. The tea trade was a lifeline for the empire, but for the farmers who grew the leaves, it was a grueling existence. These folks weren't lounging in silk robes, sipping from porcelain cups. They were out in the fields, toiling under the sun to meet the insatiable demand. The economics of tea were a double-edged sword. While it enriched the state, it also entrenched a system of inequality. And let's not forget the intrigue of tea-drinking culture itself. It was a spectacle, an art form that demanded skill and finesse. The Song Dynasty's upper crust turned tea preparation into a theatrical performance. Competitive tea brewing, or douche, became all the rage. Imagine a room full of nobles, all silently judging the color, taste, and froth of each brew. It was medieval reality TV, with tea masters vying for the title of best in the land. These contests were so serious that they even involved judges, making sure the froth was just right and the flavor impeccable. So, the next time you're sipping your morning brew, remember that it's not just a drink. It's a relic of an era where tea was the Instagram of its day, a way to show off, connect, and yes, even make a little money on the side. The Song Dynasty may have faded into the annals of history, but its tea culture still leaves a strong aftertaste. From medicinal concoction to a symbol of sophistication, Tea's transformation tells a story of economics, politics, and a little bit of obsession, courtesy of Emperor Huizong, the man who might have been the world's first tea influencer, centuries before the concept even existed. Now, before we start fantasizing about some Zen-like tranquility in these ancient tea rooms, let's get one thing straight. The Song Dynasty's tea culture was more gladiatorial arena than peaceful meditation garden. The art of tea-making was less about inner peace and more about external validation, and boy, did they take it seriously. You see, tea wasn't just brewed. It was scrutinized, judged, and ranked like a contestant on a high-stakes cooking show. This was Iron Chef, Tea Edition, with the tea master as both the chef and the star. Let's dive into the world of Dusha, the competitive tea brewing that turned every sip into a spectacle. Picture this, a room filled with aristocrats, their eyes trained on the tea master, who was the Leonardo da Vinci of leaves and water. This wasn't your average tea party. The tea master had to impress a panel of judges who were less about flavor notes and more about froth perfection. Yes, my friends, froth was king. The ideal brew had to have a certain color, texture, and most importantly, that frothy head, a bit like the foam on your overpriced latte, but with centuries of tradition behind it. And who were these tea masters, you ask? Think of them as the rock stars of their day, minus the leather pants, but with a whole lot of swagger. They were the tea world's equivalent of a Michelin-starred chef, commanding respect and occasionally envy. Their reputation was their currency, and a single misstep could cost them their standing. You had to have a steady hand and an even steadier nerve to make it in this game. The stakes were high, as a well-executed brew could elevate you to the upper echelons of society, while a poor performance might just see you relegated to the minors. Now, imagine the pressure of knowing that every pour, every swirl, and every frothy cap was being dissected by a room full of critics who had nothing better to do than sip tea and pass judgment. It was a test of skill, yes, but also of social standing. You see, the outcome of these competitions wasn't just about who made the best cup of tea. It was about who had the most influence, the most connections, and the sharpest elbows in the room. Winning wasn't just a matter of personal pride. It was a ticket to the inner circles of power. But let's not kid ourselves into thinking that every noble who attended these events was a tea connoisseur. Many were there for the gossip, the social maneuvering, and the chance to rub shoulders with the elite. In fact, these gatherings were less about the tea and more about cementing alliances and securing favors. It was the Song Dynasty's version of a business networking event, but with a lot more caffeine and a lot less small talk. And amid all this, the myth of the serene tea ceremony was born. It's easy to romanticize these gatherings as calm and contemplative, but the reality was much more cutthroat. The serene exterior masked a world of cutthroat rivalry and social jostling. The tea master wasn't just brewing a drink. They were crafting a narrative, a story that spoke of elegance, sophistication, and above all, mastery. In essence, the tea ceremony was a microcosm of Song Dynasty society, a place where status was as important as substance. Now, you might be wondering why tea was such a big deal. Why did it become the focal point of social life? The answer lies in its economic and political significance. Tea was a major revenue stream for the government, and fostering a culture of tea appreciation helped keep the demand and the taxes flowing. It was a savvy move by the state to encourage these competitions, as they reinforced the cultural importance of tea while lining the imperial coffers. It was a win-win situation, unless, of course, you were a farmer toiling away in the fields. And let's not forget the role of technology in all this. The Song Dynasty saw significant advancements in tea preparation techniques, from the development of new grinding methods to the invention of specialized tea bowls designed to enhance the frothy effect. These innovations weren't just about making a better cup of tea. They were about pushing the boundaries of what was possible, about showing off the prowess of Chinese artisanship to the world. So, the next time you sip your matcha latte, spare a thought for those ancient tea masters who turned tea into an art form. They weren't just making a drink. They were crafting an experience, one that spoke to the heart of what it meant to be part of the Song Dynasty's cultural elite. While the myth of the serene tea ceremony persists, it's worth remembering that beneath the calm surface lay a world of competition, ambition, and a little bit of froth. This was the tea culture of the Song Dynasty, not just a drink, but a way of life. And as we continue our exploration, we'll uncover even more layers to this fascinating story, where every leaf tells a tale, and every cup is a chapter in the grand saga of history. As we sip our way further into this cultural brew, it's time to talk about the Song Dynasty's ultimate status symbol, the tea set. Forget silk robes or jade jewelry. If you wanted to flex your social muscles in ancient China, you'd better have a tea set that screamed, "I have arrived." This was an era where your teacup said more about you than your choice of footwear ever could. And in a society obsessed with appearances and hierarchy, the tea set was the equivalent of a luxury car parked in the driveway. Picture this: a wealthy merchant entertaining guests in his home, each one subtly glancing at his tea set with a mix of envy and admiration. These were no ordinary cups and parts. They were artisan-crafted masterpieces, with the finest porcelain and intricate designs that could rival today's haute couture. The more ornate the set, the higher your status. It was a simple equation. Elaborate tea set equals social clout. And just like today's designer handbags, having the latest and greatest was crucial if you wanted to maintain your place in the pecking order. Tea sets were more than just drinking vessels. They were conversation starters, much like those artfully arranged brunch photos on Instagram. Each piece told a story, reflecting the owner's taste, wealth, and connections. Materials used in these sets were important too. Porcelain was the gold standard, but for those who really wanted to make a statement, there were sets made from rare materials like jade or even silver. Imagine pouring your morning brew from a jade teapot. Talk about a power move. But it wasn't just the material that mattered. The design was crucial. The Song Dynasty saw the rise of celadon porcelain, known for its delicate green glaze that mimicked the color of jade. It was the must-have item, and owning a celadon tea set was like having the latest iPhone. Everyone wanted it. Few could afford it. The celadon craze was so intense that it even influenced international trade, with pieces exported to Japan, Korea, and beyond. The tea set was not just a domestic status symbol. It was a global sensation. Now, let's not forget the societal pressures that came with this porcelain arms race. Much like today's social media influencers, Song Dynasty elites were expected to showcase their status through their possessions. It was all about keeping up appearances, and falling behind could mean losing face, or worse, social standing. This wasn't just about vanity. It was a matter of survival in a highly stratified society where connections were everything. For the average Joe, or should I say, average Zhang, keeping up with the elite was a constant struggle. The pressure to own a worthy tea set pushed many to their financial limits. It was the ancient equivalent of going into debt for the latest tech gadget or designer label. The allure of status was irresistible, and the societal expectation to conform was relentless. And if you thought the tea set was just for show, think again. The Song Dynasty's tea culture extended to the social spaces where these sets could be flaunted. The tea houses. These were the buzzing social media hubs of their time, where people gathered not just to drink tea, but to see and be seen. Imagine a bustling space filled with laughter, debate, and the clinking of porcelain, a vivid tapestry of social interaction. Tea houses were the Facebook of the Song Dynasty, a place to catch up on the latest news, swap stories, and engage in spirited debates. They were the watering holes of intellectuals, artists, and merchants, all mingling over a pot of perfectly brewed tea. And much like social media today, they were a breeding ground for gossip, rumors, and the occasional scandal. In these vibrant spaces, the hierarchy of tea culture played out in real time. Where you sat, who you sat with, and even how your tea was served spoke volumes about your social standing. Being seen with the right people was as important as what was in your cup. It was a delicate dance of social maneuvering, where every gesture and every glance had meaning. And just like today's influencers, the tea house regulars were adept at self-promotion. If you were a poet, a philosopher, or even a burgeoning merchant, the tea house was your stage. It was where reputations were made or broken, where alliances were forged, and where the latest trends were set. The tea house scene was a microcosm of Song Dynasty society, reflecting its complexities and contradictions. Of course, not everyone was there for the social climbing. Some genuinely sought the solace of a good brew and a bit of intellectual stimulation. But let's not kid ourselves. Many were there to flaunt their latest tea set, just like snapping a selfie with a celebrity today. The tea house was a place where the personal and the public collided, creating a dynamic and sometimes volatile social environment. So, the next time you're sipping your matcha at a cafe, remember that you're part of a long tradition of social rituals revolving around tea. The Song dynasty may have been a world away, but its legacy lingers in our modern-day tea culture. From the ornate tea sets that define status to the bustling tea houses that shaped social discourse, the echoes of this ancient civilization still resonate in our cups today. And as we continue to explore this fascinating era, we'll uncover even more layers to this complex tapestry of tea culture. There's much more to discover about the economic forces at play, the political machinations behind the scenes, and the everyday lives of those who lived through it all. So, stay tuned as we keep steeping in the rich history of the Song dynasty, a time when tea was more than just a beverage. It was a way of life. As we continue to explore the Song dynasty's tea culture, let's pivot from the domestic scene to the international stage, where tea wasn't just a drink but a power move. You might think of tea as a soothing beverage, but in the hands of Song diplomats, it was a strategic ace up the sleeve. Imagine tea as the original linked-in connection request, but with far-reaching consequences that could make or break alliances. The Song dynasty, ruling from 960 to 1279 AD, was a period where tea was both a domestic delight and a foreign fascination. The empire was smack dab in the middle of a bustling trade network, exchanging goods with everyone from the kittens and jerchins in the north to the kingdoms of Southeast Asia. Tea, with its ever-growing allure, was the ultimate diplomatic gift, a gesture that said, "Let's be friends, or at least not enemies." It was the velvet glove over the iron fist of negotiation, a way to sweeten the deal both literally and figuratively. In fact, tea was such a hot commodity that it was often used as a bargaining chip in treaties. The Song emperors were no strangers to border disputes and potential invasions, so they brewed up a clever strategy, used tea to keep the peace. The numbers paint a vivid picture. By the 11th century, the Song dynasty was producing around 50,000 tons of tea annually. That's enough to fill over 2,000 modern shipping containers if you're keeping score at home. A significant portion of this was earmarked for trade and diplomacy. Take, for instance, the tribute system. This was the original "I scratch your back, you scratch mine" arrangement. The Song sent regular shipments of tea to the Liao and Jin dynasties, effectively keeping the peace along their northern borders. It was the geopolitical equivalent of sending your pesky neighbor a gift basket to keep them from complaining about your noisy parties. And it worked, most of the time. The Song dynasty's tea diplomacy wasn't just a matter of doling out leaves to potential adversaries. It was a sophisticated operation that involved meticulous planning and logistics. The government had entire departments dedicated to the production and distribution of tea. These bureaucrats weren't your garden variety pencil pushers. They were the logistics masterminds of their day. They coordinated everything from harvesting to packaging, ensuring that the tea was up to snuff for foreign dignitaries. Think of them as the ancient FedEx, but with more bureaucracy and less express delivery. But let's not romanticize it too much. The logistics of tea trade were no walk in the imperial garden. Transporting tea across vast distances required a robust infrastructure, including roads, canals, and a whole lot of manpower. The Grand Canal, for example, stretched over 100 miles and was a vital artery for transporting tea throughout the empire and beyond. This was no lazy river ride. It was a grueling journey that could take weeks, with laborers working around the clock to ensure timely delivery. All this effort wasn't just about keeping the peace. It was also about making a profit. Tea was a cash cow, and the Song dynasty milked it for all it was worth. The government imposed hefty taxes on tea production and trade, raking in significant revenue. By the 12th century, tea taxes accounted for a substantial portion of the state's income, funding everything from lavish court banquets to military campaigns. It was a classic case of having your tea and drinking it too. In terms of international trade, tea was the Song dynasty's calling card. It was exported far and wide, reaching as far as the Islamic caliphates and the courts of the Indian subcontinent. By the late 12th century, tea had become a staple in the markets of the Silk Road, exchanged for exotic goods like spices, textiles, and precious metals. It was the original global brand, with a reach that would make today's multinational corporations green with envy. Yet, for all its glamour, the tea trade was also fraught with challenges. Pirates lurked along the coastlines, eager to plunder the lucrative shipments. Corruption was rampant, with officials skimming off the top and farmers bearing the brunt of the system. The romantic image of tea as a symbol of peace and prosperity was often overshadowed by the harsh realities of exploitation and inequality. But here's the kicker. Despite the challenges, the Song dynasty's tea trade was a resounding success. It not only enriched the state, but also elevated China's status on the world stage. Tea became a cultural export as well, introducing Chinese customs and rituals to foreign lands. It was a cultural ambassador in a cup, spreading the elegance and sophistication of Chinese civilization far and wide. As we sip our way through this rich tapestry of history, it's clear that tea was more than just a beverage. It was a linchpin of Song dynasty economics and international relations, a key player in the empire's grand strategy. It's easy to romanticize the serene tea ceremonies and the delicate porcelain cups, but beneath the surface lay a complex web of politics, power, and profit. The Song dynasty's tea culture was a world where every leaf had a story, and every cup was a testament to human ingenuity and ambition. So, the next time you enjoy a cup of tea, take a moment to ponder the incredible journey it took to reach your hands. From the bustling tea farms of ancient China to the grand halls of foreign courts, tea has traveled through time and space, leaving its mark on history. And as we continue to explore the fascinating world of the Song dynasty, there's still much more to uncover about this storied era where tea was both a comfort and a currency, a simple pleasure and a powerful tool. Stay tuned, because this brew is far from finished. And now, as we swirl towards the final sip of our historical brew, it's time to look at the Song dynasty's tea legacy, not as the tranquil, aromatic dream it's often made out to be, but as the caffeinated, competitive, and sometimes cutthroat saga it truly was. The Song dynasty, with its tea ceremonies and social hierarchies, has left an indelible mark on the world, but not in the way you might think. It's less about meditative peace, and more about the hustle, the grind, and the art of making a buck. Let's start by tackling the myth of tea as a Zen-like indulgence. Sure, there were serene tea gardens and beautifully crafted porcelain cups, but these were just the glossy veneer. Underneath, the tea industry was more like a frenzied stock market floor than a Buddhist retreat. The Song dynasty's tea culture was an engine of economic ambition, a bustling enterprise that fueled both the empire's coffers and its social conflicts. It was about who could brew the best cup, who could flaunt the fanciest tea set, and who could leverage the leaf for political gain. Tranquility, more like a caffeine-fueled chess match. So, what does this mean for us today? For starters, it tells us that competition and commerce have always been inextricably linked to culture. The Song dynasty was centuries ahead of its time, using tea not just as a drink, but as a cultural commodity. It was a precursor to today's coffee culture, where the local cafe is less about the coffee and more about the connections made over it. Sound familiar? Starbucks might owe a nod to Emperor Huizong. Now, about those lessons. The Song dynasty teaches us that cultural practices often serve multiple purposes. Tea wasn't just a beverage. It was a tool for diplomacy, a status symbol, and an economic powerhouse. It reminds us that what we see as quaint traditions often have deep, pragmatic roots. The next time you sip a cup of green tea, remember that it's not just a health kick. It's a sip of history, with all its gritty, competitive, and sometimes exploitative baggage. And let's not forget the farmers. While we romanticize the tea ceremonies and the elegant tea sets, it's crucial to remember the hands that pick the leaves. The Song dynasty's tea farmers were the unsung heroes, toiling away to meet the relentless demand for perfection. Their labor laid the groundwork for the empire's prosperity, even if they didn't share in its spoils. This disparity is a stark reminder that behind every cultural phenomenon lies a workforce that often goes unacknowledged. This brings us to the modern parallels. Today, as we navigate a world filled with artisanal teas and fair trade labels, we're forced to confront the same questions of ethics and equity. The Song dynasty's legacy challenges us to look beyond the surface and consider the broader social and economic implications of our consumption. It's about understanding that every product has a story and every story has a cost. In terms of cultural exchange, the Song dynasty's tea trade laid the groundwork for centuries of international relations. It was a precursor to the globalized world we live in today, where goods, ideas, and customs flow freely across borders. The tea trade wasn't just about exchanging leaves. It was about exchanging cultures. This legacy continues in our global obsession with tea, from British high tea rituals to Japan's intricate tea ceremonies, all of which owe a debt to the Song Dynasty's pioneering spirit. And while we're at it, let's give a nod to the technological innovations that the Song Dynasty brought to the table. From improving tea grinding techniques to perfecting porcelain craftsmanship, these advancements were about more than just making a better brew. They were about pushing the boundaries of what was possible, showcasing Chinese artisanship to the world, and setting the stage for future innovations. In the end, the legacy of the Song Dynasty's tea culture is a testament to human ingenuity, ambition, and the complex interplay of culture and commerce. It reminds us that history is never just a series of events, but a tapestry of motivations, ambitions, and consequences. The next time you're sipping your chamomile before bed, remember that you're part of a tradition that stretches back over a millennium, a tradition that has shaped economies, influenced politics, and crossed continents. So, what's the takeaway here? Perhaps it's that the more things change, the more they stay the same. Whether it's the bustling tea markets of the Song Dynasty or the hipster coffee shops of today, we've always been driven by the same desires: connection, status, and a good cup of brew. As we conclude our journey through the Song Dynasty's tea culture, let's raise our cups to the past, acknowledge the complexities, and sip in the rich, tangled history of a civilization that was far from tranquil, but all the more fascinating for it. Marie Curie, born Maria Skłodowska in Warsaw, Poland, in 1867, was a powerhouse in the world of science. But before she dazzled the world with her brilliance, she was just a young woman trying to make a life in a society that had a very different plan for her. In an era where women's roles were more about dusting shelves than shaking the scientific community, Marie was busy plotting her escape from the confines of societal norms. Her journey began in a country that had been sliced and diced by its neighbors, leaving Poland in a state of political non-existence, quite the backdrop for a future Nobel Prize winner. Marie was born into a family of educators. Her father was a math and physics instructor, which might explain her penchant for numbers and experiments. However, the family's financial situation was less than ideal. Her father lost his savings due to some bad investments, which meant that Marie's early life was a masterclass in resourcefulness. Forget luxury. Her life was a testament to making do with what little you had. Her schooling was equally unconventional, attending a clandestine, flying university. Yes, you heard that right. A flying university that changed locations to avoid Tsarist authorities who frowned upon women getting educated. Talk about a moving target. Despite these challenging circumstances, Marie excelled in her studies, developing a love for physics and chemistry. But the walls of Warsaw were closing in, and she knew she needed to escape to where the action was, Paris. In 1891, she packed her bags and headed to the City of Light, which was more like the city of dim flickers if you consider her living conditions. Marie lived in a garret room that was so cold she would pile on every piece of clothing she owned to sleep. Her diet was a culinary adventure of bread and butter with the occasional indulgence in tea. Not quite the diet of champions, but it fueled a mind that would change the world. At the Sorbonne, Marie faced economic challenges that would have sent lesser mortals packing. But not Marie. She was too busy scribbling equations in the margins of her notebooks, occasionally using her tiny stove for impromptu chemistry experiments. Imagine the smell of sulfur and burnt toast mixing in the air. Ah, the aroma of scientific discovery. Despite the financial strain, she completed her degree in physics in 1893, ranking first in her class. Because of course she did. She followed this up with a degree in mathematics the next year, coming second. Slacker. Marie's decision to pursue science was as rebellious as it was radical. In a time when women were expected to stick to the domestic sphere, Marie was busy smashing glass ceilings instead of polishing them. Her determination was fueled by a passion for discovery, a hunger for knowledge that couldn't be satiated by traditional roles. She was a woman on a mission, determined to carve out a place for herself in a field dominated by men. And she did it all while battling not just the societal norms, but also her own financial limitations. Her story is often romanticized as a tale of a lone genius, but let's be real. It was more like a roller coaster of challenges, economic struggles, and relentless ambition. The legend is captivating, but the reality was gritty. Marie Curie was not just a figurehead of scientific progress. She was a testament to resilience and tenacity. Her life was an ongoing experiment in overcoming adversity, a formula of grit plus genius that equaled groundbreaking discoveries. So, next time you hear about Marie Curie, remember the young woman who defied the odds, the scientist who used her stovetop as a lab, and the trailblazer who redefined what it meant to be a woman in science. Her journey from Warsaw to Paris was just the beginning of a life that would illuminate the world, one radium discovery at a time. Marie Curie's journey from Warsaw to Paris was just the beginning of a life that would illuminate the world, one radium discovery at a time. But let's zoom in on this dynamic duo, Marie and Pierre Curie. Now, if you're imagining some kind of candlelit chemistry lab where romance and radium mix, you might want to adjust your mental picture. Their partnership was less about moonlit strolls and more about meticulous measurements and mutual respect. Think of it as a love story written in scientific notation. Marie met Pierre in 1894, and let's be honest, it was intellectual chemistry at first sight. Pierre was already a respected physicist, known for his work on piezoelectricity. You know, the ability of certain materials to generate an electric charge in response to mechanical stress. It's the kind of thing that might make you the life of a scientific party. Marie and Pierre bonded over their mutual love of science and their shared penchant for defying societal norms. They married in 1895, and their honeymoon was a bicycle tour. Forget Venice. They pedaled through the French countryside. Romantic, sure, if you're into the Tour de France of science. The Curie lab was hardly a scene from a glamorous biopic. Imagine a drafty shed that looked more like a glorified broom closet than a laboratory. No high-tech equipment here, just a collection of odds and ends, some of which would probably raise a few eyebrows at a modern health and safety inspection. Yet, in this humble setting, the Curies embarked on a journey that would redefine the world's understanding of radioactivity. To them, handling radioactive materials was as routine as a modern office worker dealing with spreadsheets. Gloves, protective suits, please. They were handling radium like it was just another day at the office. In 1898, the Curies announced the discovery of two new elements, polonium, named after Marie's beloved Poland, and radium. This wasn't just a eureka moment, it was a seismic shift in the landscape of science. Up until then, atoms were considered indivisible, the smallest units of matter. But here were the Curies, effectively saying, "Hold my Bunsen burner." Their discoveries opened up a Pandora's box of atomic wonders. But let's talk economics, because nothing screams romance like financial reality. With radium's newfound fame came the potential for commercial exploitation. Yet, the Curies, in a move that would leave modern patent lawyers shaking their heads, refused to patent their discovery. They believed that science belonged to humanity, not to a bank account. This noble stance didn't exactly pay the bills, but it did set a precedent for scientific integrity. In a world where radium was worth $100,000 a gram, a fortune at the time, Marie and Pierre chose principles over profit. Now, about those myths of a glamorous life. Picture this, Marie and Pierre, hunched over their workbench, surrounded by jars of glowing radium salts. Sounds enchanting until you realize the glow was literally killing them. The dangers of radioactivity were unknown at the time, so the Curies handled these materials with the kind of casual disregard that would make a modern health and safety officer break out in hives. Their lab equipment was often contaminated, and they suffered from chronic illnesses that would later be linked to radiation exposure. Their lives were far from the romanticized tales often spun in history books. They were more like a gritty drama with a side of scientific obsession. Long hours, grueling experiments, and a steadfast commitment to their work defined their partnership. And just when things couldn't get more challenging, Marie faced the additional hurdle of being a woman in a fiercely male-dominated field. She was often overlooked and underappreciated, her contributions minimized by those who couldn't see past her gender. Yet, Marie was unyielding. She was a woman who carried radium in her pockets like it was loose change. not because she didn't know the risks, but because there was no alternative. Her dedication was both her strength and her Achilles heel. She was so consumed by her work that even after Pierre's tragic death in 1906, he was run over by a horse-drawn carriage. She continued their research, fueled by a relentless drive that defied the limits of personal grief. Marie Curie's work on radioactivity wasn't just groundbreaking, it was earth-shattering. The romanticized image of the Curies as a perfect scientific couple glosses over the grit and determination required to make their discoveries possible. Their life was a testament to the harsh realities of pioneering science, where personal sacrifice was as much a part of the equation as the scientific method. And while they may not have lived lavishly, their legacy is priceless, setting the stage for the atomic age and forever changing our understanding of the universe. As Marie continued her work, the world began to see the true power of radioactivity, a force that would bring both unimaginable progress and peril. But that's a story for another time. As Marie Curie continued to illuminate the world, both literally and metaphorically, her life was anything but a glowing fairy tale. Following Pierre's sudden and tragic death in 1906, Marie found herself in a whirlwind of personal and professional chaos. Imagine juggling flaming torches while riding a unicycle on a tightrope. That was Marie's life, minus the circus tent. Grief-stricken but undeterred, Marie took over Pierre's teaching position at the Sorbonne. Yes, she became the first woman to teach there, though her students were probably more interested in the fact that she was breaking new ground rather than glass ceilings. Her lectures on radioactivity were not just about sharing knowledge. They were about asserting her place in a scientific community that often treated her like an interloper at a members-only club. And let's not sugarcoat it. Being a woman in science during the early 1900s was about as welcome as a bull in a china shop. Meanwhile, back at the Curie household, Marie was raising two daughters, Ian and Eve. Balancing motherhood and scientific research is tough enough today, but in a time when the concept of work-life balance was as foreign as a smartphone in a Victorian parlor, it was Herculean. The household was a mix of radium, rattles, and relentless ambition. While Ian would later follow in her mother's radioactive footsteps, Eve was more inclined toward the arts, a family dynamic that must have made for some lively dinner conversation. But let's talk about the elephant in the lab, Marie's scandalous affair with physicist Paul Langevin. In 1911, this personal relationship ignited a media firestorm that would make modern tabloids salivate. Imagine the headlines: "Widowed scientist in love triangle." The affair, occurring a mere 5 years after Pierre's death, was scandalous not just because Marie was involved with a married man, but because it provided the perfect fodder for a society eager to see a powerful woman brought down a peg. The French press had a field day, painting her as a homewrecker rather than a groundbreaking scientist. Despite the public backlash, Marie's scientific achievements were gaining monumental recognition. In 1911, she was awarded her second Nobel Prize, this time in chemistry, for her services to the advancement of chemistry by the discovery of the elements radium and polonium. She became the first person ever to win 2 Nobel Prizes. That's right, folks. She was essentially the Michael Jordan of the scientific world, except instead of slam dunks, she was dunking on the limits of atomic knowledge. Economically speaking, Marie's life was still far from luxurious. Her refusal to patent radium meant that while others were cashing in, she was busy scraping by. Her lab was still more minimalist chic than modern marvel. Yet, her integrity was as unyielding as her scientific curiosity. She wasn't about to monetize her discoveries at the expense of scientific progress, even if it meant living like a bohemian scientist. Her financial choices were the kind that would make even the most altruistic of us wince, but they were grounded in a belief that science should be shared, not sold. But let's not ignore the irony here. Marie Curie, the woman who discovered radium, often treated like she was radioactive herself, especially by those who couldn't handle a woman outshining them in a field dominated by men. Her resilience in the face of public scrutiny was nothing short of legendary. She continued to push the boundaries of science, all while facing rumors, slander, and the ever-present shadow of gender bias. Her grit was matched only by her genius, and she wore both like a badge of honor, even as society tried to tear her down. So, what kept Marie going through the tumult? It was her unflagging dedication to her work, coupled with a resilience that would make a cockroach look fragile by comparison. Her life was a testament to the notion that the most groundbreaking achievements often come at a personal cost. Marie Curie's journey through the storm of public opinion and personal trials didn't just illuminate the path for women in science. It set the entire field on fire. Her tenacity was the kind that made her contemporaries take note, even if some were more interested in her private life than her professional one. As she continued to navigate these turbulent waters, her influence only grew, laying the groundwork for an era of scientific discovery that would reverberate through the ages. But hold onto your Geiger counters. There's more to Marie's story, and it's just heating up. Marie Curie's story was far from over, and in the years leading up to World War I, she was about to reinvent herself as a scientific superhero. Forget the capes and spandex. Marie's power came from her relentless dedication to making science work for humanity, even in the middle of a global catastrophe. When the war erupted in 1914, the world was plunged into chaos, but instead of retreating into the safety of her lab, Marie charged into the fray, armed with the knowledge of X-rays and a determination to help save lives. During World War I, Marie Curie essentially became the MacGyver of medical technology. She recognized the potential of X-rays to locate shrapnel and bullets in wounded soldiers, which could mean the difference between life and death on the battlefield. But here's the kicker. The French army had about as many X-ray units as a fish has bicycles. So, Marie dove headfirst into the challenge, rolling up her sleeves and getting to work. She spearheaded the development of mobile radiography units, affectionately dubbed Little Curries. These units were basically X-ray machines on wheels, built from scratch with the kind of ingenuity that would make a DIY enthusiast drool. Marie, never one to shy away from hard work, personally trained over 150 women to operate these machines. Imagine her, elbow deep in mechanical parts, explaining the intricacies of radiographic imaging while the sounds of war rumbled in the distance. By the end of the war, these mobile units had examined over 1 million wounded soldiers, a staggering testament to her impact. Talk about leaving a mark. Marie Curie's contributions probably saved more lives than any general on the front lines. But let's not forget the unglamorous side of this effort. The logistics were a nightmare, with resources scarcer than a polite Twitter debate. Marie had to beg, borrow, and cajole to get the necessary equipment and materials. She even used her Nobel Prize medals as collateral to secure funding, a move that screams dedication louder than a rock concert. Her efforts weren't just about science. They were about humanity, driven by a moral compass that pointed true north, even when the world seemed to be spinning out of control. Meanwhile, Marie's own health was taking a hit. Her prolonged exposure to radiation was catching up with her, proving that the glow of radium was more sinister than magical. She suffered from chronic fatigue, cataracts, and other ailments that read like a catalogue of radiation-induced illnesses. Yet, in classic Marie fashion, she brushed off concerns like they were minor inconveniences, focused solely on the work that needed to be done. It was as if she had a rock star's mentality. The show must go on, even if it's killing you. Marie knew the risks of her research, and yet, like a moth to a flame, she couldn't help but be drawn to the glowing allure of discovery. Her dedication was both awe-inspiring and tragic, a reminder of the sacrifices that often accompany groundbreaking work. She was the kind of scientist who would march into Mordor if she thought there was data to be gathered there. While she may not have had a ring to destroy, she was certainly forging a path through the scientific unknown. Her health issues didn't stop her from continuing her research after the war, but they did add a layer of urgency to her work. Marie was acutely aware that her time might be limited, and she pushed herself harder than ever, determined to make every moment count. It was a race against the clock, one that she tackled with the same tenacity that had defined her entire career. In a world of half-measures and compromises, Marie Curie was the full package, uncompromising and unyielding in her pursuit of knowledge. Her story during these years is a testament to the complex nature of heroism. On one hand, she was a media sensation, hailed as a scientific icon and a role model for women everywhere. On the other, she was a human being, grappling with the physical toll of her work and the relentless demands of a world that expected miracles. The romanticized image of Marie Curie as a tireless genius glosses over the reality of her sacrifices and the personal cost of her achievements. Yet, through it all, Marie remained steadfast. She wasn't just a woman of science. She was a woman of principle, prioritizing the greater good over personal gain. While others might have seen the glowing radium as a ticket to fame and fortune, Marie saw it as a tool, a potentially dangerous one, that could advance humanity if used wisely. Her story challenges us to look beyond the myth and appreciate the intricate dance of sacrifice and success that defined her life. As the war came to a close, Marie Curie's legacy was more secure than ever. She had not only contributed to the scientific community, but had also left an indelible mark on the world at large. Her innovations in medical technology and her unyielding spirit had set a new standard for what it meant to be a scientist, transcending the boundaries of gender and societal expectations. And while her health continued to decline, her influence only grew stronger, paving the way for future generations of scientists who would stand on her shoulders to reach even greater heights. Marie Curie's later years were a masterclass in resilience, a testament to the power of dedication in the face of adversity. Her story is a reminder that the path to greatness is rarely straightforward, often littered with obstacles and challenges that test the very core of our being. Yet, it is precisely in overcoming these challenges that true greatness is forged. As the world began to rebuild in the aftermath of war, Marie's legacy shone brighter than ever, a beacon of hope and inspiration for all who dared to dream. But hold on, because there's still more to uncover in the final chapter of her incredible journey. And so, as the dust of war settled, and the world began to piece itself back together, Marie Curie stood as a testament to what relentless ambition and a dash of radioactive glow could achieve. But let's not kid ourselves. Her legacy wasn't a neat package tied with a bow. It was more like a science kit with missing instructions and a few hazardous materials thrown in for good measure. Marie Curie didn't just leave a mark on the scientific community, she left a crater. Her discoveries in radioactivity were the big bang for nuclear physics, and her work laid the groundwork for advancements in both science and medicine that we're still unpacking today. First, let's talk about her impact on modern medicine. Marie's work with radium opened up a Pandora's box of possibilities, some terrifying, others life-saving. By the 1920s, radium was being used to treat cancer, a practice that evolved into what we now call radiation therapy. Fast forward to the present, and more than half of all cancer patients in the United States alone receive radiation therapy as part of their treatment. It's a staggering number, underscoring how Marie's discoveries have literally been a lifeline for millions. Yet, it's a bittersweet legacy, considering the very element she discovered also contributed to her own ill health, proof that sometimes the things that save us can also harm us. Beyond medicine, Marie's work shattered the atomic ceiling, if you will, paving the way for nuclear energy, and yes, nuclear weapons. The dual nature of her legacy, a force for both creation and destruction, mirrors the complexities of scientific advancement itself. It's a reminder that every breakthrough comes with its own set of ethical dilemmas. The discovery of radium was like giving humanity a double-edged sword, and Marie handed it over with the hope that we wouldn't just end up cutting ourselves. Now, onto the myth-busting portion of our program, the lone genius narrative. The image of Marie as a solitary figure, hunched over her test tubes in a dimly lit lab, is both romantic and misleading. Sure, she was the face of her discoveries, but behind the curtain was a network of collaborators, assistants, and supporters who helped amplify her brilliance. Take Pierre Curie, for instance. Their partnership was less about candlelit dinners and more about candlelit experiments. It was a marriage of minds, a collaboration that proved two heads, especially ones this sharp, are better than one. Then there were the unsung heroes, like her lab assistant André Debin, who aided in the isolation of radium, or her daughter Iron, who would go on to win her own Nobel Prize in chemistry in 1935. Marie wasn't a one-woman show. She was the star player on a team committed to pushing the boundaries of science. It's a lesson in the power of collaboration, an acknowledgement that even the brightest stars shine brighter in a constellation. Marie's life also challenges the notion that brilliance must come at the expense of everything else. Her story is often painted as one of sacrifice, which is true to an extent, but it's also a story of balance, albeit the kind you'd expect from someone juggling radioactive isotopes. She raised 2 daughters, navigated personal scandals, and still managed to change the world. It's a reminder that even the most driven individuals are, well, just that, individuals with personal lives, struggles, and triumphs outside their professional achievements. And let's not forget the economic reality of her life, which was less riches of the lab and more rags and radium. Despite her groundbreaking work, Marie lived modestly, often battling financial constraints. She famously refused to patent her radium purification process, believing that scientific knowledge should be shared freely. It was a noble stance, but one that left her with fewer francs than you'd expect for someone who discovered elements. Her financial choices were a testament to her integrity, a commitment to the greater good over personal gain. Yet, they also highlight the often harsh economic realities faced by pioneers who refused to capitalize on their discoveries. Marie Curie's legacy is a kaleidoscope of inspiration, innovation, and complex human emotion. She paved the way for future generations of scientists, particularly women, who saw in her a beacon of possibility in a world that often felt claustrophobically male. Her life wasn't just about the accolades. It was about breaking down barriers and proving that curiosity knows no gender. Today, women in STEM fields still face challenges, but they do so with the knowledge that they're standing on the shoulders of giants like Marie, a woman who didn't just break the mold. She shattered it and used the pieces to build something entirely new. Her story is a stark reminder of the true cost and value of being a pioneer. Marie paid the price in health, personal sacrifice, and the occasional tabloid scandal, but what she gained and gave was immeasurable. Her journey illuminates the messy, beautiful, and often contradictory nature of greatness. It's a narrative that defies simple categorization, much like the woman herself. As we close the book on Marie Curie's life, it's tempting to tie it all up with a neat moral. But the truth is, her legacy is a complex tapestry, woven from both triumphs and trials. It's a story that encourages us to question the myths we hold dear, to look beyond the headlines, and to appreciate the intricate dance between genius and humanity. Marie Curie didn't just illuminate the world with her discoveries. She challenged it to think more deeply about the nature of science, the role of women, and the price of progress. In doing so, she left a legacy that continues to inspire, provoke, and enlighten. A fitting tribute to a woman who, in her own words, was less interested in people and more in ideas. So, whether you're a budding scientist, a history enthusiast, or someone who just loves a good story, take a page from Marie's life and let your curiosity guide you. Because if there's one thing she taught us, it's that the pursuit of knowledge is a journey well worth taking, even if it is a little radioactive. Southern Africa in the late 18th century was like the Wild West, minus the cowboy hats, and with a lot more spears. At that time, the region was a tapestry of Nguni-speaking clans, each with its own chief, traditions, and a penchant for settling disputes with a good old-fashioned skirmish. These folks weren't exactly the best of neighbors, and the Zulus were just one of many clans trying to carve out a piece of the pie in this chaotic buffet of tribal politics. But hey, chaos loves company, and it turns out it's the perfect breeding ground for a charismatic leader to rise up and shake things, literally, to their core. Now, before Shaka Zulu strutted onto the stage, the Zulu clan was about as significant as a footnote in a textbook. They were led by a chief named Senzingekona, a guy who had enough family drama to fuel a soap opera for decades. Senzingekona had a son, Shaka, with a woman named Nandi, and let's just say their union was about as legitimate as a $3 bill. This made Shaka's early life a series of unfortunate events, including being sent away from his father's kraal, essentially a Zulu homestead, which was less of a go-find-yourself trip and more of a we-don't-want-you-here kind of situation. Meanwhile, the political landscape was a tangled mess of treaties and betrayals, like Game of Thrones, but with more cattle. The Mthethwa and Ndwandwe clans were the big shots at the time, each with ambitions bigger than their herds. Dingiswayo, the Mthethwa leader, was a visionary, dreaming of uniting the clans under a single banner. He had a knack for diplomacy, and his influence spread like wildfire through the region. But diplomacy only takes you so far when everyone else is sharpening their spears behind your back. Enter the age of Mfecane, or the Crushing, period marked by relentless warfare and migration, as if Mother Nature decided she'd had enough of peace and quiet. The causes of the Mfecane are as layered as an onion, and just as likely to make you cry. Population pressures, European trade demands, and internal power struggles all played a part. But remember, this wasn't just about land and resources. It was about survival and dominance, played out on a stage as vast as the African plains. The Zulus, under Senzangakona, were barely scraping by, overshadowed by their more powerful neighbors. But here's where the power of ambition kicks in. Shaka, despite his shaky start, was about to enter the picture and change everything. But before we dive into his rise, let's not forget the unintentional domino effect set into motion by the European arrival in southern Africa. With their shiny trinkets and insatiable appetite for ivory and slaves, the Europeans had a knack for stirring the pot. They saw Africa as a treasure chest, ripe for the picking, without much thought for the people living there. As the 19th century dawned, southern Africa was a pressure cooker, and the heat was about to be turned up. Alliances shifted faster than a teenager's mood, and everyone was eyeing their neighbors with suspicion. The Ndwandwe, led by Zwide, were itching for a fight, while the Mthethwa were trying to keep the peace. Spoiler alert, it didn't work out so well. In this volatile mix, Shaka was about to step into the limelight, armed with a revolutionary vision and a determination as unyielding as the African sun. It's easy to romanticize this era, with tales of mighty warriors and epic battles, but the reality was far harsher. Life was brutal, and survival depended on cunning as much as strength. The Zulu kingdom, as we know it, didn't just spring up overnight. It was forged in the fires of conflict, and shaped by the relentless ambition of one man who saw beyond the horizon. Before Shaka, the landscape was fragmented, a mosaic of cultures and clans vying for supremacy. But the pieces were about to fall into place in ways no one could have anticipated. As we set the stage for Shaka's rise, remember that history isn't just a series of events. It's a tapestry woven from the actions and dreams of those who dared to shape it. The Zulu kingdom's birth was a testament to the power of ambition and the chaos it can unleash. In this world of shifting sands and uncertain alliances, Shaka was poised to become a legend with roots in the gritty reality of a land where the only certainty was change. Shaka Zulu didn't just stroll onto the historical stage. He came barreling in like a force of nature. Born in 1787, Shaka's early life was anything but the royal fairy tale you might expect from a future king. His upbringing was more Cinderella in a kraal than prince in a palace. Senzangakona, Shaka's father, was a minor chieftain, and his relationship with Shaka's mother, Nandi, was frowned upon by both their communities. This union led to Shaka being born out of wedlock, which, in the social hierarchy of the time, was about as scandalous as it could get. This scandal ensured Shaka's childhood was filled with more drama than a reality TV show reunion. He was often ridiculed and marginalized, which, spoiler alert, tends to build character, or, in this case, a future military juggernaut. Young Shaka was eventually sent packing with his mother to live with the Mthethwa, under the protection of Chief Dingiswayo. It was here that Shaka's life took a turn, moving from the shadows of obscurity into the realm of opportunity. Dingiswayo saw potential in Shaka, which was a smart move considering Shaka would later shake up the whole region. Under Dingiswayo's mentorship, Shaka learned the art of leadership and warfare. He absorbed strategies and tactics like a sponge, but he wasn't satisfied with the status quo. No, Shaka had bigger plans and a vision that would turn military conventions on their head. Let's cut through the romanticism for a second. Shaka didn't invent the wheel, but he sure did reinvent the spear. Prior to Shaka's arrival, Zulu warriors fought with long throwing spears called assegais. Effective, sure, but Shaka saw an opportunity for innovation. Enter the Ikloa, a shorter stabbing spear named after the sound it made as it was withdrawn from a body. Gruesome, absolutely. Effective, you bet. This weapon transformed the Zulu warrior into a formidable force in close combat. But Shaka's genius didn't stop with weaponry. He revolutionized military formations, introducing the bull-horn strategy, a tactic that would leave many opponents scratching their heads, and then promptly losing them. Picture this. The Zulu army arranged itself like a bull, the chest made up of the main force engaging the enemy head-on, while the horns would encircle and attack from the sides. The loins, or reserves, waded in the back, ready to support or pursue. It was brilliant in its simplicity and devastating in execution. Now, let's bust a myth or two. Shaka was a military innovator, not a magical conjurer. Some myths suggest he could single-handedly defeat entire armies with his bare hands or communicate telepathically with his generals. Sorry to burst that bubble, but Shaka's true power lay in his ability to inspire and lead men, not in comic book superpowers. His military reforms were grounded in practical and tactical brilliance, not mysticism. Shaka's rise to power wasn't just about swinging a spear around. It was about navigating a complicated web of alliances, betrayals, and political machinations. After Dingiswayo's death, Shaka seized the opportunity to claim leadership of the Mthethwa and then the Zulus, expanding their influence with a blend of diplomacy and, when necessary, a swift military boot to the posterior. By the early 19th century, Shaka had united the Zulu clans and absorbed neighboring tribes, creating a centralized Zulu kingdom. His methods were sometimes brutal, but effective. The Zulu army became a disciplined and feared force, a testament to Shaka's relentless ambition and strategic mind. Under his command, the Zulu warriors executed his tactics with precision, reshaping the political landscape and sending shockwaves through southern Africa. The economic impact of Shaka's military conquests was profound. Control over more territories meant increased access to resources, cattle, and trade routes. Cattle, the currency of the time, flowed into the Zulu kingdom, enriching the nation and solidifying Shaka's power. The ripple effect of his campaigns also influenced the regional economy, as displaced tribes migrated, seeking new lands and creating new dynamics. While Shaka was busy rewriting the rules of warfare and governance, his personal life was, if anything, even more complicated. His relationships with his family were strained, to say the least. Shaka's mother, Nandi, was a significant influence throughout his life, and her death in 1827 was a turning point. Shaka's grief led to a period of mourning that was as intense as it was disruptive, marked by a decree that no crops be planted and no milk consumed, a commandment that wreaked havoc on the Zulu economy and society. As we delve deeper into Shaka's world, it's crucial to remember that the man often gets overshadowed by the myth. Shaka Zulu was not a demigod, but a leader whose vision and ferocity left an indelible mark on history. He was a product of his environment, shaped by adversity, guided by ambition, and driven by an unyielding desire to forge a legacy. In the grand tapestry of history, Shaka's story is a reminder of the power of innovation and leadership to transform societies. The Zulu kingdom's rise under his command is not just a tale of conquest, but of survival and adaptation in a rapidly changing world. As the threads of this narrative continue to weave, remember that legends are built on the gritty reality of the human experience, where triumphs and tragedies are separated by the thinnest of margins. Shaka's era was a time of upheaval and transformation, a crucible in which the future of southern Africa was forged. His legacy is complex, a mixture of greatness and brutality, innovation and oppression. As we look to the next part of this saga, prepare to explore the broader implications of Shaka's reign and the enduring impact of his legacy. The story of Shaka Zulu is far from over, and the echoes of his life resonate to this day, challenging us to question the narratives of power, leadership, and the relentless march of history. As Shaka's story unfurls further, let's get into the nitty-gritty of empire building. Ever tried assembling a jigsaw puzzle where half the pieces are missing, and the picture on the box is pure chaos? That's kind of what Shaka was dealing with when expanding the Zulu kingdom. Except, in his case, the missing pieces were entire clans, and the chaos involved spears rather than cardboard. By the time Shaka was done, he had unified over 30,000 square miles of territory, roughly the size of Ireland, under the Zulu banner. Not too shabby for a guy who started as an outcast, right? Now, while Shaka's military genius was undoubtedly a driving force, he wasn't just marching around swinging his Ikwa willy-nilly. He knew when to sweet-talk and when to swing that spear. Diplomacy was his velvet glove, and intimidation was the iron fist inside it. Shaka understood that sometimes a well-placed threat was worth 1,000 battles. He had a knack for convincing neighboring chiefs that joining him was in their best interest, often with the subtle undertone of "join us, or else." By 1818, Shaka had already scored a couple of major victories against the Ndwandwe, but it was the Battle of Karkley Hill that truly showcased his strategic wizardry. Facing an enemy force reportedly twice the size of his own, Shaka used the terrain to his advantage, luring the Ndwandwe into a trap and pulling off a stunning victory. This wasn't just a win. It was a mic drop moment that sent waves of fear and respect across the region. The economic implications of Shaka's expansion were as significant as the territorial gains. Cattle were the currency of the day, and as Shaka's influence spread, so did his herds. More cattle meant more wealth, and wealth translated into power. The Zulu economy thrived under his rule, with the kingdom's growing trade networks stretching as far as the Portuguese settlements on the east coast. Shaka's conquests also brought an influx of skilled laborers, artisans, and warriors into the kingdom, bolstering its economic and military might. But let's not pretend it was all sunshine and prosperity. Shaka's reign was as brutal as it was brilliant. His methods of maintaining control were often harsh, and tales of his ruthlessness have become the stuff of legend and exaggeration. While Shaka's iron-fisted discipline whipped his forces into shape, stories of him executing warriors on a whim or punishing entire villages for minor infractions have been blown out of proportion. Sure, he was no saint, but the man wasn't exactly the boogeyman some accounts would have you believe. One of the most notorious myths is that Shaka drowned 7,000 people in a single massacre. In reality, the numbers are likely inflated. Historians suggest that while punishment was severe for those who resisted his rule, Shaka's primary goal was consolidation, not annihilation. His iron grip was about forging unity, and for the most part, he succeeded. The Zulu kingdom wasn't just a patchwork of conquered lands. It became a cohesive entity with a shared identity, a significant feat considering the diverse cultures and languages within its borders. Shaka's expansion wasn't just a series of conquests. It was a strategic chess game played across the African plains. Each move was calculated to bring more clans under his control, either through alliance or absorption. By the early 1820, Shaka had unified numerous tribes, including the Curie, Hlubi, and Mkais, bringing them into the fold of the Zulu kingdom. This wasn't just about adding names to a list. It was about creating a network of loyalty and allegiance that would cement his power. Yet, the more Shaka expanded, the more he had to contend with the challenges of maintaining such a vast domain. Communication and control were paramount, and Shaka's innovative use of runners to relay messages across his empire was a testament to his logistical genius. These runners, known as Izimbangi, could cover up to 50 miles a day, ensuring that Shaka's commands reached even the most distant outposts with remarkable speed. While Shaka was busy expanding his kingdom, the broader dynamics of southern Africa were also shifting. The Mfecane, the upheaval caused by Shaka's conquests and the resultant migrations, was reshaping the landscape. Tribes displaced by the Zulu expansion were forced to move, leading to conflicts and alliances that transformed the region's political map. It was a domino effect, with Shaka's empire at the epicenter. As the Zulu kingdom grew, so did its need for resources. The demand for cattle, grain, and other goods increased, and Shaka's conquests opened new trade routes and opportunities. The kingdom became a hub of commerce, with goods flowing in from as far afield as the Cape Colony and Portuguese Mozambique. This economic boom was both a blessing and a challenge, as it required careful management to prevent the kind of internal strife that could dismantle everything Shaka had built. Shaka's legacy is a complex tapestry, woven from threads of ambition, innovation, and brutality. He transformed a fragmented region into a formidable power, but his methods were as divisive as they were effective. The stories of his ruthlessness have often overshadowed the strategic brilliance that defined his reign. As we continue to explore the impact of Shaka's rule, it's essential to separate the man from the myth, acknowledging both the allure of his legend and the reality of his actions. In the grand theater of history, Shaka played his part with a mix of courage, cunning, and yes, controversy. His empire was not just a testament to his tactical prowess, but also a reflection of the turbulent times in which he lived. The Zulu kingdom's expansion under his leadership was a masterclass in statecraft and military strategy, with lessons that resonate far beyond the borders of southern Africa. As we journey deeper into the saga of Shaka Zulu, keep in mind that this tale is far from over. The echoes of his life and leadership continue to challenge our understanding of power, ambition, and the complexities of human history. As we look ahead to the next chapter, prepare to delve into the broader implications of Shaka's reign and the enduring impact of his legacy. The story of Shaka Zulu is a reminder that history is as much about the people who lived it as it is about the forces that shaped it. And so, we dive deeper into the societal whirlpool that was the Zulu kingdom during Shaka's reign, a time when the very fabric of daily life was being rewoven with threads of military might and cultural metamorphosis. Shaka didn't just build an empire, he built a new way of life for his people, one where the spear was not just a weapon, but a symbol of identity. Let's start with the nitty-gritty of the Zulu social structure under Shaka. Imagine a pyramid, not one of those Egyptian marvels, but a hierarchy where loyalty and military prowess determined your place. At the top was Shaka himself, the ultimate alpha, whose word was law. Below him, a network of commanders and nobles, each entrusted with the governance of different regions. These were no mere placeholders. Their job was to maintain order and ensure the king's decrees were followed to the letter. It's easy to romanticize the Zulu warriors as noble savages or fearless knights of the African plains. But in truth, life as a Zulu soldier was a relentless grind. Training was rigorous, and discipline was as unyielding as the African sun. Every man was expected to demonstrate unwavering loyalty and be ready for battle at a moment's notice. The Zulu military machine was not just about brute strength. It was about precision, coordination, and an almost religious devotion to the king. And for those not donning the battle regalia, the impact of this militarization was equally profound. Villages were transformed into support systems for the war effort, with women and children playing crucial roles in logistics, from food production to managing cattle, the lifeblood of the Zulu economy. Cattle were more than just beasts. They were wealth incarnate, a currency that dictated social standing and economic power. Shaka's reign wasn't just about spears and shields. It was also about cultural shifts. Traditional ceremonies and rituals were adapted to reflect the new order. The royal dance, umgubho, became a grand display of unity and collective strength, a way to instill pride and camaraderie among the ranks. Music and storytelling flourished, serving as both entertainment and a means of preserving history in a society where oral tradition was the primary means of recording the past. But like every party, this militaristic revelry came with its hangover. The ripple effects of Shaka's expansion were felt far beyond Zulu borders. Neighboring tribes experienced seismic shifts as they were either absorbed into the Zulu fold or displaced entirely. The Mfecane, that infamous period of chaos and migration, was both a result of and a catalyst for Shaka's conquests. It was like a game of musical chairs, except with more spears and fewer seats. The domino effect of displacement forced many tribes to migrate, leading to new conflicts and alliances. The Satho, Swazi, and Tiswana peoples, among others, were caught in this upheaval, their societies reshaped by the need to adapt or perish. It was a harsh lesson in survival, a reminder that in the Game of Thrones there are no permanent winners, only survivors. As if internal pressures weren't enough, Shaka had to contend with the arrival of European settlers, whose shiny trinkets and insatiable land hunger added a new layer of complexity to the already volatile mix. The Europeans, with their muskets and maritime prowess, were a different breed of adversary. They viewed the African continent as a smorgasbord of resources, with little regard for the existing social and political structures. Shaka, ever the strategist, understood the significance of these new arrivals. He engaged in trade, recognizing the potential benefits of acquiring firearms and other European goods. But he also knew that these settlers represented a threat, both to his sovereignty and to the traditional way of life. And so, Shaka navigated these waters with a mix of diplomacy and guarded suspicion, aware that the tides of change were inevitable. Internally, the pressures of maintaining such a vast empire began to take their toll. The very militarization that had propelled the Zulu kingdom to greatness became a double-edged sword. The constant state of readiness bred a culture of fear and suspicion, where even the slightest hint of dissent could lead to severe repercussions. Shaka's rule, while revolutionary, was also marked by paranoia and an increasing reliance on harsh measures to maintain control. Externally, the pressure from displaced tribes and the encroaching European settlers created a volatile environment. The neighboring territories were like a powder keg, with tensions simmering just below the surface, ready to explode at any moment. Shaka's expansion was both a shield and a target, offering protection, but also drawing the ire of those who saw his kingdom as a threat to their own survival. As the years wore on, the cracks in Shaka's empire began to show. His once unquestioned authority was challenged, not just by external forces, but from within his own ranks. The very warriors who had helped him build the Zulu kingdom began to question the endless cycle of war and conquest. The relentless drive for expansion left little room for peace, and fatigue set in among the ranks. Shaka's relationships with his family and inner circle became increasingly strained. The death of his mother, Nandi, left a void that no amount of conquest could fill. His grief, once a source of strength, turned into a shadow, clouding his judgment and leading to erratic decisions. The mourning period he imposed, with its harsh restrictions, sowed seeds of discontent among his people. By the late 1820, the stage was set for a dramatic turn. The internal and external pressures were converging, creating a perfect storm that would ultimately challenge Shaka's reign. The Zulu kingdom, once a beacon of power and unity, was now a cauldron of tension and uncertainty. Shaka's legacy, though monumental, was teetering on the edge of turmoil. But fear not, history lovers, for this saga is far from over. The echoes of Shaka's life and leadership continue to resonate, challenging our understanding of power, ambition, and the complexities of human history. As we look ahead to the next chapter, prepare to delve deeper into the broader implications of Shaka's reign and the enduring impact of his legacy. The story of Shaka Zulu is a reminder that history is as much about the people who lived it as it is about the forces that shaped it. As the dust settled over the Zulu kingdom, Shaka found himself at the crossroads of triumph and turmoil, a leader whose past glories were increasingly overshadowed by the gathering storm of discontent. By 1828, the once unassailable king was facing the ultimate betrayal, not from an external enemy, but from within the very ranks that had once hailed him as the architect of a new era. It's a classic tale of power. What goes up, inevitably, must come down, and in Shaka's case, the descent was as dramatic as his rise. The plot against Shaka was hatched not by rival tribes, but by those closest to him, his half-brothers Dingaan and Mhlangana, with the assistance of his trusted advisor, Mbafa. Shaka's increasingly erratic behavior and harsh decrees, exacerbated by the grief over his mother's death, had sown seeds of unrest among his people. His decision to suspend farming and milk consumption after Nandi's passing wasn't exactly winning him any popularity contests, especially when hunger began biting harder than a Nile crocodile. The assassination was a grim spectacle, fitting for a Shakespearean tragedy. On September 22, 1828, Shaka was lured to Kwadukusa, his royal kraal, where his brothers struck. According to some accounts, Mbafa dealt the first blow, with Dingaan and Mhlangana ensuring the deed was done. It was a betrayal of epic proportions, the kind that keeps historians awake at night, pondering the what-ifs of history. With Shaka's death, the curtain fell on an era of expansion and innovation, leaving behind a kingdom at a crossroads. But what of Shaka's legacy? The man who had reshaped the socio-political landscape of southern Africa was now a ghost, haunting the corridors of history with his larger-than-life legend. The kingdom he left behind was a testament to his vision and ambition. Under his rule, the Zulu had transitioned from a minor clan to a formidable regional power, a transformation as improbable as it was impressive. The Zulu kingdom was not just a political entity, it was a cultural force, with its influence rippling through the region long after Shaka's demise. However, Shaka's legacy is a double-edged Ikloa. On one hand, his military innovations and unification efforts laid the groundwork for a stronger, more cohesive Zulu identity. On the other, his brutal tactics and the chaos of the Mfecane left scars that would take generations to heal. The displacement of tribes and the ensuing conflicts had redrawn the map of southern Africa, creating new alliances and animosities that would shape the region's future. And then there are the myths. Oh, the myths. Shaka Zulu, the warrior king, whose tales have been spun into folklore and legend. Stories of his supernatural prowess, his ability to slay hundreds single-handedly, or his alleged tyrannical rages, have added layers of mystique to his already enigmatic figure. While these tales capture the imagination, they often overshadow the historical reality. Shaka was a man, not a mythic demigod. His true genius lay not in mythical feats, but in his strategic mind and ability to inspire loyalty and fear in equal measure. In modern South Africa, Shaka's legacy is a complex tapestry woven into the nation's cultural and historical identity. The Zulu kingdom, with its rich traditions and proud history, remains a symbol of resilience and unity. Yet the shadow of Shaka looms large, a reminder of both the glory and the darkness that defined his rule. His story, a blend of triumph and tragedy, continues to echo in the collective memory, challenging us to reconcile the man with the myth. Globally, Shaka Zulu has become a cultural icon, a figure whose life and exploits have been immortalized in books, films, and television. From the 1986 television series that brought his story to an international audience to countless historical analyses, Shaka's narrative is one that fascinates and captivates. His life is a testament to the enduring power of storytelling, where fact and fiction intertwine, leaving us to ponder where the legend ends and the reality begins. As we wrap up this historical exploration, it's crucial to acknowledge the broader implications of Shaka's reign. He wasn't just a leader, he was a catalyst for change, a force that reshaped the socio-political landscape of an entire region. His methods, while often controversial, were instrumental in forging a new identity for the Zulu people, one that endures to this day. The Zulu kingdom, under Shaka's leadership, became a beacon of cultural and military innovation, a legacy that continues to inspire pride and reflection. In the end, Shaka Zulu's story is a reminder of the complexities of history, where heroes and villains are often one and the same, and where the line between legend and reality is as fluid as the tides. His life was a masterclass in ambition and adaptability, a testament to the power of vision and leadership in a world defined by change. As we close the book on this chapter of history, we do so with a deeper understanding of the man behind the myth and the indelible mark he left on the world. So, as you drift off to sleep, remember that history is not just a collection of dates and events. It's a living tapestry, woven from the dreams, ambitions, and struggles of those who dared to shape it. Shaka Zulu was one such figure, a man whose legacy continues to challenge and inspire, reminding us that the past is always present, echoing through the corridors of time.